really think you have a chance against us, Mr. Cowboy?
Hey, mother... What do you like to do?
Oh, I don't know. Play chess. Screw.
Well, let's play chess.
They give off to Jonathan Taylor. Jump cutting his way. Close to the goal line. He's in there. Touchdown. I-N-D-Y. Jonathan Taylor.
Wheeler finds Clark from the logo.
Here's Halliburton into the front court. Mishandled it, but gets a shot. Hits it. Hits it.
John, I have never been better to be on the air with you here in Indianapolis, a place where so many of my dreams have come true.
The Ride with JMV on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I'll be honest with you, I dig days like today and nights like tonight. We'll get into today in a second. 4 o'clock hour is going to be must listen. I'll explain coming up, but a night like tonight, with a couple of basketball games, one where you have a newfound enjoyment, or maybe you're just kind of sitting back and saying, hey, it's about time you got here with this Pacer team. Yeah, during a long season. That's how I feel, because I've been on board with this run-it back program with this Pacer team since going all the way back to end of last season, and everybody was questioning my savvy, my ability to put together fictitiously a squad as I did, and I was becoming a little freaky about it. There have been significant steps taken, especially as we turn the calendar to 2025, and the Pacers have won 6 consecutive and go back-to-back with the Cleveland Cavaliers coming up later on tonight. A win on Sunday at home at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. That is coming up later on tonight. So I'm always kind of curious where your attentions are going to go. You have that. And I wish it were this easy. I wish it were this accurate. And I wish I believed it. But if there were ever a team that would owe it to a fan base that loves them, but is sick and tired of this same old garbage, that loves them. Seriously, the bar, it's almost like the Colts and Anthony Richardson. The bar is set so damn low. If you just give us a good half, if you give us the entirety of a game, or, a 2-week period, and then we can start talking our junk again. We can get on the internet and tell everybody to smooch our rear end because this is IU. This is our history. These are our banners. It's like when Anthony Richardson completes a pass and so many Colts fans want to name him MVP. Comes with the territory. But I wish that you could count on it tonight, because they owe you. After that Iowa game, and they don't, I'm sure that they don't feel like that they owe you anything, but they do. They owe you a performance, IU fans, because that was crap water on Saturday. And between watching it and doing the JMV takeover, and then having to watch the not-so-special portions, especially in the second half, when you're down 10 at the half, and you come out and you get absolutely boat raced out of Carver Hawkeye Arena, that was embarrassing, and it would only be left off the list of embarrassing if there haven't been so many other embarrassing moments over the recent history of this basketball program. So they owe you. They owe you. And really now more than ever, it's NIL. They get paid, so they really do owe you. Man, it's not like you can say, well, I don't get paid and blah, 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 and I'm here for an education and all this, and I get my food for free. We're going to have a bake sale. Well, they owe you. And we'll see what they bring to the table coming up later on tonight against an Illinois team. I was talking to Jake about this, and I heard their conversation with Bruce Weber, the former college coach on the Big Ten Network, a little bit earlier. And now more than ever, you have to have the ability to live with a lot of stuff in this particular basketball era. Man, and I try not to rip it. And I try not to talk junk about it. I try not to be the 55-year-old curmudgeon. I try to be what I think my image is. I feel like I'm 55 going on 35. Because it's basketball. And I hate helping stick a fork into something I love so much. I want the option of enjoyable college basketball. I don't want to have to think about the finances that are playing a role, and I don't want to have to think about it today versus yesterday. We have those thoughts really across the board around here right now regarding our sports. And it's not just me that all the time embraces the past and the past being better. Because, frankly, in terms of a lot of things, and especially in terms of wins and losses, it has been. And it is, and something you can be proud of, want to be proud of. And now all you think about, first thing you think about is like money. Second thing you think about is the transfer portal. And then you're caught in the middle as a fan, too, because you want your team to have this incredible NIL funding. This bankroll ready to pay as IU does in like the top 5 in college basketball. That's fantastic. But you also dig on free agency, so you, to a smaller degree, you like the transfer portal. You just don't like where college basketball is. And you have to really be pulled into being able to enjoy it. Now, let me tell you this. When you have a team that loses and then in some losses shows the lack of effort and care that a couple of different times this season this team has shown, that just pushes you away. Like Kurt Signetti and the football program brought you guys all back together, all you IU fans. I get it. I mean, it brought you in. Hey, they're a hardcore. They went at it. They said, we're going to do this, and they did this. And it brought everybody together that's an IU fan, much like IU basketball used to bring you together, but doesn't now. IU basketball does a hell of a job to say, all right, is there anything else on? Because I can't watch this crap any longer. And it's basketball. It shouldn't be that way. So I got to thinking, what are your attentions going to be turned to coming up later on tonight? You have a Pacer team that's enjoyable to watch, but I know a lot of you are down on the NBA. Again, I'm a tremendous basketball fan. I love the NBA. I don't care what anybody says. You watch these guys, especially if you go to a game, how big, tall, strong, athletic they are. It is incredible to see that. I think at times, how in the world have they not made the damn court wider yet? How is there any room for anybody and their feet and their athleticism over in the corner not to be standing out of bounds, which most of the time they are? So what will you be watching tonight at 7 o'clock? What are you going to get your care or put your care or your focus into? And then furthermore, in terms of IU basketball, who's going to be first to win you back around here? IU basketball or the Colts? And you keep coming back and you keep saying, all right, this is it. All right, this is something I can believe in. All right, now you're on the right path. And you just keep getting knocked down. Yeah, you know what? Not yet. Yeah, this is not it yet. You can look good against Rutgers, look good against Penn State. You can look good for a 2-week period while also losing arguably your best player. And then you can go to Iowa City and absolutely get destroyed and de-pantsed. And that's very Colts. Because you feel the same way about the Colts. You can beat the Jets. You can beat the Patriots. Your quarterback can be back. And he engineers a couple of fourth-quarter touchdown drives, which was the difference. And now this guy's Joe Montana. And then all of a sudden he gets injured, doesn't play. You go to New York, get embarrassed, and yeah, here you are, kind of the same old, same old. So which team is going to justify winning you over again? I don't want to say the quickest because nothing's been quick about this process. But who's going to do that first? Who's going to bring you back before they drive you away forever is what I want to know. And again, it hurts me to say that because I love basketball And I want to be able to watch, and I want to have some enjoyment. But far too many times you watch IU basketball, and there is zero enjoyment in it. And here's what you take away. Like, those guys don't look like they enjoy it. So how the hell can you? How can I? These guys are playing. This is like our dream. Our bubble of a world dream is to be in their situation, be in their shoes. And there are a lot of times they go, well, is there any place else I can be? Is there anything else I can be doing? And it's kind of the same thing enthusiasm-wise with the Colts when those moments really, truly matter. Here in recent history, especially in the last 4 years, we have seen this football team live down to expectations, or as we like to say nowadays, crap their pants. And go out like chumps. Seriously. That's how you go out. Go out that way. You watch. If there's one thing you can do in terms of your comparison with the Colts to those that have gone to the postseason now, this has been one of the, and I don't know, I'm going to have James run the numbers, which I'm just lying. He's not going to run the numbers, but I'm going to say he's going to run the numbers. This has to have been the most boring wild card in forever. This entire weekend has sucked. You had one game that was made more enjoyable, and its signature moment was a guy hitting the right upright from 35 yards away to win the game. Seriously. That was the crowning moment of the wild card weekend. Hooray. And here's where you can factor in your favorite football team around here. You look at all this crap water that has played and that has lost, and then you try to tell me, why in the world is this Colts team not even close to that? Because you're going to try to tell me, you're going to try to say, well, they're not that far off. They are. The one thing Chris Ballard has been right about in like the recent years, the one thing, it's not been tight end. It's not been about his process or his blueprint or what you do to build a winning team. That's all been a swing and a historic miss. The one thing he's been right about is this team's not close. It is not close. And how much does it stink to see what everybody else does compared to what your favorite team does, and then go, well, wait a minute. This has been awful, and they're not close, so how close are we? The answer is you're not. And Chris Ballard, seriously, thumbs up right there. He's right about something. And that is what he's right about. Rick Venturi is going to join us coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. I cannot wait for that. We're going to go thorough across the board. And he normally wants to wait until Chris has that post-game presser, which these have all become far too familiar, especially over the past 4 years. Well, this is what I did wrong, and I didn't do this right, and it's all on me. And Jim Irsay said to fix it, it's on me, and if my way doesn't work, I'll get fired. I can live with that, and blah, blah, blah. And that same old stuff. But it's going to be broken down. So Rick's going to join us in the 4 o'clock hour. Actually, I think it was Cole that reached out a little bit earlier and said, hey, man, do you mind if I send you a question? As if my questions aren't going to be good enough, which they will be, but that's okay, Cole. I get it. Sometimes you guys are deserving of a forum. And this is what I try to provide to you all the time. Everybody just thinks I'm just some old crusty guy that wants to piss and moan about something. I don't. Nothing could be further from the truth. But I do want to provide an outlet for you where you kind of put your arms up and go, hey, what the hell's happening around here? What's funny, and I'll never get over this, our good friend Derek Schultz, who at times when I miss, I don't know, when do I miss? Like every eclipse or something like that. When I'm off, maybe every eclipse or so, Derek will come in here, Greg Rakestraw, and I responded to something Derek Schultz had tweeted last night because he was talking about Minnesota. And he was talking about the Vikings winning a lot of games, but never anything of significance. And this dude responded, and I can't remember his name. This dude responded with, kind of like the Manning Colts. And, it really shouldn't piss me off as much as it does, but honestly, it does. What kind of idiots are around? I mean, and I know maybe he's caught between, maybe we lose it in translation. Were you trying to be funny? Because the last thing you should do is to reflect on that era and have one damn bad thing to say about it. Considering how low the bar is set right now with this group. If the quarterback throws a completion, you put him in the damn Hall of Fame. All right, so he had a couple of fourth-quarter comebacks. Oh, well, this team, they would have won if Jonathan Taylor hadn't dropped the ball. Oh, well, great. So you besmirch the greatest career that really, outside of the Pacers and the ABA, that any professional team in this market has ever seen? That's what you want to do. And I know that, again, it could have been lost in translation where this dipstick was trying to be funny or this dipstick is just simply put a dipstick. But you should never have a bad thing to say about that. I don't care if they only won one Super Bowl. I mean, you've seen a team for 4 years now that can't get to the postseason. For 6 years to win one playoff game, one division title in 10 years. And the Manning, Polian, Dungy era was disappointing because they only won one Super Bowl while participating in two. What kind of dumbass do you have to be? And I'm going to give benefit of the doubt here and suggest that was just somebody trying to be funny. But I had to shout out to Derek and say, hey, man, you got to educate these people around here, at least some of them, not all of you. I know that those of you that listen to the show and truly care and truly understand, you've got much greater sense than that. What in the world are you doing? Disappointed? If that's disappointing, what the hell is this? Hell? Seriously. If that is disappointing, what is this? If the end of the night era was disappointing, what is this? Where are we here? Rick Venturi is going to join us coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. I can't wait on that. Greg Rakestraw took Kevin Bowen to Notre Dame to watch basketball last night. That sounds like absolutely zero fun. We'll talk about that with Greg coming up here at the bottom of the hour. I'm sure that trip and a little high school basketball, a little collegiate worked into. You got IU, Illinois later on tonight. You got Purdue coming up tomorrow night. I believe that's on the road in Washington. They got that West Road trip now with the Pac-12 teams in the Big Ten at Washington and at Oregon coming up on Saturday afternoon. Washington, by the way, that's tomorrow night. We'll talk about tomorrow. Have that. Is his name Osabar? Great. His first name's Great, which I think is a hell of a name. Great. And he played for Utah State, if you remember, in round 2 against Purdue last year in the NCAA tournament at the Fieldhouse, if memory serves. So he was in the transfer portal and may wish that he would have stayed at Utah State outside of getting more money, I'm sure, to play for the Huskies. That's tomorrow night with the Boilermakers. Tomorrow night, Seton Hall and Butler at Hinkle Fieldhouse. Butler's 7-10 on the season, 0-6 in the Big East. It, simply put, could not go much worse than that. And the Pacers later on tonight against the Cavaliers. We're going to get JJ in the 5 o'clock hour before he talks to Rick Carlisle. No, Rick was on with Swebo in the morning, and I think everybody felt pretty good about Tyrese Halliburton's situation. And believe me, just because this team played well in the second half, don't go trying to fool yourself that Halliburton's not an essential piece, all right? Don't do it. What I want you to do is embrace the fact that they got it done in the fashion in which they did and not dump on somebody that is incredibly necessary for this operation to perform at a high level. Can I be much more clear? Just because you played well in the second half doesn't mean you don't need Tyrese Halliburton, because, by God, you do. I don't know where this came from, and who knows where this will end up going. And I think I brought this up a little bit yesterday. I think this may have came from Jake through somebody else to me regarding Miles being here and regarding Miles' future here. And I would have to suggest right now that they're going to try to do everything necessary to bring him back. And let me just tell you, it's not because of his skill set fitting here and only here. Let's recognize something. You look across the NBA landscape and you tell me how many big guys are not a significant, and I'm talking about good big guys, not like pick your rear end big guys, but good big guys. How many valuable bigs cannot stroke to three or cannot be a threat? I think really there's only like one. Jared Allen would be one, and that's the matchup Miles will get coming up later on tonight. Jared Allen's a good player, and they can go inside out with their bigs right there with both Mobley and Allen. But it is a rarity, and Miles will look good anywhere. Miles will look good in Boston with that team. Now, they have Porzingis, but let's just say, for example, they didn't. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns shoots the three. Now, is Karl Anthony Towns better on the interior with his back to the basket? Absolutely. Is Porzingis? Probably not. But all these teams have that as a major threat. I'm talking about good teams. Now, there are differences. You got a 0.5 in Denver with Jokic. So, Miles' talent would translate at the top level to other really good teams, not just the Pacers. Now, we'll also say this. Give credit where credit is due. He does fit this program great. He is what they need. He, just like Halliburton is the guy that puts this entire product together, I think that they're at their best offensively when he is out there on the floor. He distributes, he scores on his own. He is that significant threat. But it is, and you got to keep in mind, really good teams all have pieces to the puzzle, some more significant than others, but certainly those pieces are necessary. Just a reminder for you right there. Regardless of what takes place later on tonight, TNT Television and The Fan has you covered at 7 o'clock. Does that mean I have anything goes tonight? Who put that in the rundown sheet? So anything goes for how long tonight, do we know?
Probably be about 22, 23 minutes.
Well, just wonderful. Cavaliers and Pacers. Pacers get Detroit. Cade Cunningham looks really good, by the way. You guys check that out last night? How about Detroit over New York? Detroit, I'll give credit where credit is due. Chris Denary told me before the season started that Detroit, or Detoilet, as I like to reference them, was going to be much better, and they simply put have. At Detroit coming up on Thursday. Philly back here at Gainbridge Fieldhouse on Saturday. And then they embark for Paris for back-to-back games against Wembayama and the San Antonio Spurs. All right, quick break. We'll come back. Rakestraw on the other side. Tom's Watch Bar on Thursday again. We have a bunch of these. I'm going to try to introduce you to the new incredible place here in downtown Indy with TVs everywhere. Now, I will tell you, the last time I watched a Pacer game at Tom's Watch Bar, it was maybe the worst game in the history of the franchise, and it was the Pacers against the Charlotte Hornets back in December. But we got to exercise those demons. Thursday, we'll be at Tom's Watch Bar. It is another of many appearances there, so I'd love to see you. We're not getting out as much here in the early January, mid-January, start of 2025, because the Colts didn't do jack squat this season. So we're not out nearly as much. I want you to take advantage of it when we are out. So hopefully I'll see you coming up on Thursday here downtown off of Illinois. Tom's Watch Bar. We will have a lot to do for that. I promise you that. Greg Rakestraw is going to join us on the other side. We got JJ joining us from the field house at the 5 o'clock hour. And Rick Venturi. However much time he needs in the 4 o'clock hour, he is going to lay it out like nobody else will. Rick Venturi, must listen, 4 o'clock hour. The stream, the app, HD Radio, it is The Lounge at YouTube Live at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with JMV. 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Rick Venturi coming up at the top of the hour. I would consider that for you, my friends out there, must-listen Colts content that, simply put, you're not going to catch anyplace else coming up at 4 o'clock today. JJ is going to be at the Fieldhouse. You got the Cavaliers and the Pacers Part 2 coming up tonight. That tip time is at 7, which means I have to go 20 minutes longer with Anything Goes tonight, and I'm thrilled. I can't wait to do it. So me and you after 6 with Anything Goes tonight. And as I mentioned, JJ, Rick Venturi, but joining us now, the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. He, next to the snowman, Jerry Reed, back in the Smoking the Bandit days, maybe the best long-haul driver out there. He is Greg Rakestraw, who joins us now. So you and Bowen went to Southern Michigan last night, huh?
We did, and I am the son of a trucker, so I come by it honestly. So putting in miles is not a problem for me.
Did you ever get on his CB?
What's that?
Did you ever get on his CB?
I did not break off a breaker 19 on his, but on other folks, but potentially. But yes, Bowen and I did roll up to South Bend to see the Irish get a victory for Boston College last night.
I love CBs, man. That was great. I remember one time there was this truck behind us, and I was breaker 19 on the CB, and the guy got back with me and, quote, said, "I'm about to put the hammer down on this 79 Oldsmobile in front of me right here." What, hell yeah.
I would imagine that there would be, I'm going to go with Ken Myers of the engineering staff. I would think there would be somebody on that staff that could figure out a way for the JMV takeover to also include a CB request line, not just the telephone number, but that you could take out some CB shout-outs during the show on a given Saturday.
I think people tend to forget how impactful CB lingo and that era was in the late 70s. I mean, hell, everybody, really for about a 5-year period, everything was about CB.
Where do you think we got cell phones from, buddy?
That's
that was
it, man.
It was right there.
So, I guess you're right. I always looked at the CB for those like in the trucking workforce, just trying to get around Smoky or hot sauce, if you will.
Of course.
Yeah.
Or potentially on a moonshine run, something like that.
Absolutely love CB terminology back then. So how was it last night? Is it a boring atmosphere at Notre Dame? Because it looks like it.
It was not exactly a full house, which I'm trying to figure out. I don't have maybe the same disdain for Southern Michigan that you do, but I'm thinking to myself, what else better on a Monday night do you have to do?
Right.
The announced crowd was 4,300. Maybe 2,000 to 2,500 were actually in the building. And as ACC basketball goes, I've seen better games. There were certain that Kay Davis had a phenomenal game for Notre Dame. Marcus Burton did some good things. They have a kid that's a second-year transfer from Northwestern, Julian Roper, who just got every impactful loose ball in the second half and really kind of turned the momentum of that game in favor of Notre Dame. So, atmosphere-wise, it wasn't great, but you know what? I was able to stretch out. And if I may sit left or right of me, parking was quick, convenient, and cheap and easy. So there sometimes is an advantage, John, in not going to everything having to be a sold-out, jam-packed atmosphere. It was casual, and I was in the mood for casual.
Did you guys stop at the Hip Hugger on the way home?
We did not stop at the Hip Hugger because, as I put on Twitter last night, if Cinnamon had been on her shift, I probably would have went. But I also wanted to make sure I wished her and the baby the best of luck.
Yeah. That's a big moment in Cinnamon's fictitious existence right there, which is awesome, by the way. I would say.
Now, be honest, you knew that was a parody account when you shared it, correct?
There's no question.
That, right?
There's no question about it. That's what the Kokomo Press is.
On the joke. Okay.
Isn't the Kokomo Press like the Onion or the Bee or whatever that is?
For Kokomo, there is a Paducah, Kentucky version of that's also really funny. So Kokomo Scanner, real. Kokomo Press, fake.
So Greg Rakestraw is on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Do we have any idea what we're going to get out of IU tonight, especially after what was a major half-assedly disappointment in the way they played at Iowa City on Saturday night?
I would say you would expect to have something better, but, this IU team seemingly is more capable of letting you down than impressing you. So I was about to say I'm not sure we know what we're going to get, but probably more bad than good. Even when they win, it can sometimes be ugly. So I just hope it's not as bad as it was against the Hawkeyes last time out.
It was awful on Saturday, too. I was listening actually a little bit to Don and Eric. I had that on while I was doing the JMV takeover on my phone to hear where things were going with that. And Don had mentioned something like they were down 10 going into the half and, talked about the second half really important and you would expect a little bit of uptick in energy. And you didn't get it. It was like they couldn't wait to go away. And that more times than not, I explained this a little bit earlier, has been the calling card for these IU teams, is you give them a little bit of resistance, a little bit of pushback, and they'll go away.
And again, I think Mike Woodson is stuck thinking that it's so different than coaching pros. And yes, I know the guys are like pros now. They're getting paid and getting paid well. I understand that. But there needs to be a little more collegiate motivation than I think oftentimes Mike is willing to offer. So it's the same old song and dance with a roster that, frankly, is more talent than what we've seen here the last couple of years.
So Greg Rakestraw on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Boilermakers all over Nebraska. Boilermakers get 2 out west beginning tomorrow night in Washington and Saturday afternoon in Oregon. What do you make of the Boilers since, obviously, the end of December and, getting in with the Auburn and the Texas A&M and that Penn State loss? What's this Boilermaker team look to you right now as we hit the middle of this month?
Clearly looking better, and obviously, they had to figure out a way to play without Zach Edey. They knew that going into the season, but, saying that and then going through it are two completely different things. And obviously, given the strength of the SEC, those losses to Auburn and Texas A&M don't look so bad. I think Penn State's a pretty decent team. It's not like this is the Penn State of old where, that's a bingo free space and you're supposed to go win that game, anywhere it's played for whatever amount of people, that game's going to be played in front of them. And so improved, I'll put it that way. Again, I think the ceiling is significantly lower on this Purdue team. That's not a bad thing. That's not a knock. It just is what it is. So, again, I think there's less that's asked of the group. But are they playing better? I think absolutely, John, they are.
So Greg Rakestraw, he's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. What do you make of Butler? Get their top 2 returning scores and winless in the Big East. They have played really an awful level of basketball right now. What do you make of them, and then what do you make of Thad Matta? Obviously now deep into his second tenure over at Hinkle at Butler, and this thing is going nothing but down for he and that program right now.
Right. This was not the expected result, for this season, because you've heard me talk about this. I thought it was a pass-fail class. Are you going to make the NCAA tournament or not? That obviously looks like a pipe dream, given how things are going. Now, they have been competitive in most games, but finding obviously more ways to lose than win. And when you had a losing streak that is now dating on a month, in any sport, that's not good, especially in this one. And obviously, I think there might need to be a bit of a recalibration of the program coming up if this does not turn significantly over the course of the last couple of months. Again, I understand they're swimming in a much larger pool now, but the idea is when you have a guy like Thad that had won at your place and won at a larger level, the hope was that you could kind of do that again. And clearly that's not being demonstrated just yet. So you kind of wonder if already the clock might be ticking on Thad in terms of at Hinkle.
Hey, Greg, a couple of local interest nuggets here for everybody. Paul Casaro, you're number 1 at IU Indy. How's that going? I know they went through a losing skid, back on the winning track. How's that gone compared to what people thought to this point?
I think it's been very, very good. And, I knew that they could make dramatic improvements, and the win-loss record, you could double it and still be a 12-win team from last year. They are so significantly better. And against Detroit Mercy was the other team that was kind of in the same boat as them last year, where they were like a boat anchor on the rest of the league because they were so far off the back of the pack. fortunately for IU Indy, and maybe for the rest of the league, Detroit Mercy had some really good wins early in the non-conference season. They're all kinds of beat up. They've lost 2 of their top 3 scorers for the season. When we saw them on Thursday night, their best player was not playing due to an ankle injury, and the Jaguars truly pounced on them. The 95 points that IU Indy scored was their most they've scored in the Horizon League game. This is year 8 of the Jags in the Horizon League. It's the biggest win they have had by 34 points since they're in the Horizon League. So the Jags have won twice so far in league play. You know, I think a realistic goal for them is it's kind of a couple different strata for them. If you get to 5th or 6th, you know, you're in the top half of the league. Really only IUPUI until this year has flirted with that one time. They have yet to host a conference tournament game in the current format of the league, and we've been having this current format for the last 4 or 5 years where the first round or 2 is played at home. They get to have a home tournament game. To do that, you got to be the number 8 seed. And so that's one goal. If you're the number 5 seed, then you have a bye to the first round. You get to play in the second round. Those are some tangible gets that IU Indy can have. So they are significantly better, and there's a couple of guys that, frankly, are putting up better numbers at the Division I level than they did at the Division II level playing for Paul. So he is getting everything out of that group that he possibly can, and it was good to see him rewarded with a sizable victory on Thursday night.
Pat Knight and Marion, how about this season for that group?
If you look at the overall record, it's not great, but if you look at the level of competition they play, because the Crossroads League is so stinking good. When I checked the polls last week, 4 teams were in the top 20, and another one was receiving votes. Marion beat one of those teams on January the 4th in Huntington. They are probably not a national tournament team this year, which is going to be the first time in 6 or 7 years that's not been the case for Marion. But they are playing a lot of freshmen. Noah Lovin from Providence, Aiden Franks from Wapahani, Josiah Gustin from Pendleton Heights. Dylan Moles is still a younger player on that team. You know, now the question is, can you keep everybody together? Does everybody stay, or do you guys want to go try to play at a higher level after 1 year at the NAI ranks? If Pat can keep that group together, I think they can be really good as soon as next year. The rest of this season, they're going to take some lumps at times because, again, that level of play is such a borderline Division I level. And let me give you a couple of examples. 2 years ago, Ben Humrickhouse was playing in Huntington. Last year, he played at Evansville. Now he plays at the University of Illinois. The best post player in the league the last couple of years is Elijah Malone that played at Grace College. He is now in the rotation at Colorado. That's how good that league is. So Marion's taking some lumps, but long-term, I think they're going to be okay.
Greg, got to go really quick here. Fisher's the best team in high school basketball for the fellas of the state of Indiana. Is that Zachary Kidd a legacy?
That would be – so he is his dad played at Anderson Highland. Uncle played at Anderson Highland.
Okay.
So, yes, he is part of the Zachary family that were Scots back in the day and are Tigers now.
All right. And best team of the state of Indiana?
They are the one of the few unbeaten teams and the only one in terms of those competing at the top end of 4A. Crown Point would be the other, but Fishers is the clear number 1.
He's Greg Rakestraw. What do you got going into the weekend? I'm sure it's something.
So Thursday night, big girls clash between LC and LN, always a great rivalry game. Friday night and Saturday night, Marion County semifinals and championship game at Southport Fieldhouse.
You got it. Greg Rakestraws of the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. We've got the 90s coming up on the JMV Takeover on Saturday night, buddy.
Then you'll be getting a phone call from me.
I'll be waiting on it. Thanks, man.
See ya.
It's Greg Rakestraw on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. We have a birthday in rock and roll, a significant birthday in music. And I'll ask you where he may rank in today, considering the past, coming up on the other side. Jeremiah Johnson's going to be holed up at the Fieldhouse, not on Pacers TV tonight. It's TNT with the Cavaliers and the Pacers. That tip is at 7. Of course, your coverage right here on the Fan as well. But Rick Venturi, live, local, and late breaking coming up here at the top of the hour. I promise, Colts fans, you will not want to miss it. Quick break. Back with you. Top of the hour, Rick Venturi on 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
I want you to be nice.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Colts fans, Rick Venturi, top of the hour. You will not want to miss it. Got a special music birthday today. Dave Grohl is 56, lead of the Foo Fighters. Now, also a former drummer of Nirvana. Would you rather be known as drummer for Nirvana or lead of Foo Fighters? What has brought Dave Grohl the most recognition?
That's a tough question right there, actually.
Drummer for Nirvana, lead Foo Fighters.
I would say the Foo Fighters just because he's the front man for it.
But the Foo Fighters will never be as legendary as Nirvana.
Correct.
For a couple of different reasons. And believe me, they're great. They're the best rock band still out there, right? Because, one, it's not like anybody's creating any really strong rock bands anymore.
That's fair.
But Nirvana will go down in history as absolute legends.
But when I think of Nirvana, I think more of Kurt Cobain than I do Dave Grohl.
So you would rather be known as Foo Fighters frontman than Nirvana drummer if you're a Dave Grohl.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where would you rank him? Because you had all that explosion we talked about with those bands from Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, on down the line. Where would you rank Grohl with those that are still with us, like Eddie Vedder, and those that are no longer with us, like Cobain, like Cornell, like Lane Staley? Where's Grohl in that hierarchy of leads?
Are we talking like as a singer?
As a singer, as a lead singer for a rock band.
Well, I would say Lane Staley is in a category of his own.
To us, maybe not to everybody, because you got to be a special. Like Grohl, I think, is a flavor for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he's Neapolitan. Is that fair?
That's
like,
fair.
You got a little strawberry, a little vanilla, a little chocolate in there. But Lane Staley could be just one particular flavor, which is an awesome flavor, but one flavor. Chris Cornell could be maybe one or two flavors. Yeah, maybe Cobain is a flavor for everybody. Maybe.
That's a tough question for me because I would say like Lane Staley is one of my favorite vocalists of all time. I think he has one of the greatest rock voices of all time. I like Dave Grohl as a singer, but I don't know if I've ever heard him sing anything where I was like, holy crap, like this guy, he's really going at it.
So, SPT here, Sean Patrick Turley says, don't forget about Scott Weiland. There's the late Scott Weiland in that hierarchy of those voices. Jeff says, I don't know anything about modern rock. Yeah, I know it sucks. I know enough. Jeff, I know it sucks bad. No, it's about as exciting as a Colts-Giants game. I know that. So, yeah, I think I do know. Jeff, thank you very much. Rick Venturi joins us coming up at the top of the hour. Hey, JMV, you mispronounced Washington. It's Washington. It's Eddie in Silverdale, Washington. Washington. You're going down to Washington to buy a new Davenport. That means you're going to Davies County to get a new couch if you're in southern Indiana. Cheers, JMV. Didn't mean to imply you don't ask good questions. I was disappointed with what was asked to Chris at the press conference. No, seriously, I am not offended by that in the least, Cole. Not at all. JMV can't even get face value against only ranked opponents in Assembly Hall this season. No one to root for. This team stinks. Woodson stinks. Time to reset the program. Why drive 90 minutes from the north side to watch that garbage product? IU Sears. IU, Illinois, Bloomington, 7 o'clock. You've got the Pacers and the Cavaliers at 7 o'clock from Cambridge Fieldhouse. And you've got the State of the Colts with Rick Venturi. This is going to be some moments you will not get back, so make sure you're part of it live. Rick Venturi joins us next.
The Ride with JMV.
I am the cream, yeah. The cream of the crop. And there is no one that does it better.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Hey, welcome back. Coheed and Cambria tickets we have to give away before the end of the show. I got some Anything Goes after 6. JJ from the Fieldhouse in the 5. Cavaliers Pacers round 2, 7 o'clock. Illinois, IU, and Bloomington also at 7 o'clock tonight. This date in history, 1996, the dramatic last-second near miss. Hail Mary, Jim Harbaugh, Aaron Bailey. That's the 95 AFC title game at Three Rivers Stadium. The Steelers go on to the Super Bowl with that 20-16 win. That goes back to this date, 1996. But speaking of this date in 2025, go ahead and get ready. We're going to have some fun. The state of the Colts, and something you have to hear every single season once it's complete. From the radio network, and certainly friend of this show, the former head coach in the NFL, it's Rick Venturi, who joins us now. Hello, Rick. How are you?
Hey, John. How you doing, man? Just, up here on the 13th fairway, it's snow-filled today. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's another tough wild card weekend. This is 4 years in a row for us. Watching it from our couch, not being a part of that 40% in the playoffs, and that's what it really amounts to. 40% of the NFL, goes in the playoffs, 60% doesn't. And, it just gets very, very difficult when you look at it, and you see these teams battle and you see what they do and you don't do. And, 4 straight years of it, it's just very tough. I know it's tough for the fans. I know it's tough for you, and I'll be honest with you, it's really tough for me.
Well, I mean, it is. I guess in a small way, Chris Ballard was accurate about something, because if you watch all these bad wild card games, I mean, some of these teams suck, and how far are the Colts off? Shane Steichen said at the end of the year that they're close, and then Chris Ballard said Friday they're not. This may be one thing that Chris Ballard's accurate about, is them not being close, because that's true.
I thought, and we can get into all the nuances of the presser. It was pretty much we've really kind of seen that story before. I mean, we've watched that story before. Instead of mea culpa, it was mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. I mean, it was a little bit more of that, and I will change. I'm grateful, and things like that. I thought the best. I thought if there was anything great to be taken out of it going forward, for once, and I'm just going to reiterate what you just said, was his statement that we're really not close. We've been delusional for so long, and one of the things that I think has been a huge mistake here, he didn't come out and say it, and he's using terms like competition. We can get into that. But in reality, one of the biggest mistakes, in my opinion, over the years is not a great self-analysis, not a lot of self-criticism, kind of a delusional look at our team, really without question overvaluing our own players, and being hesitant to go out and get better. And that's permeated here now for years and years and years. And you just look at somebody like the Texans, who aren't a great team, but they won the division last year, went out and got Mixon, Diggs, Hunter, Autry, Alshire, Murray, Ward. I mean, it's preposterous, and I don't know why nobody has really ever called this out totally. It's preposterous to think that you can build a championship team with the draft alone. That's just absolutely impossible, and it's really ridiculous to not utilize every single resource that's out there for you, free agent, trading, whatever it takes to get better, because, the draft is hit or miss. I've sat down, I've talked with the great Bill Polian about this, and Bill will tell you that, in all his years, even the great ones hit on about 50% of the draft, no matter when it is. And if you're going to hit, you really have to hit on the, basically the first two picks, your investment type picks. In the last 2 years, Richardson, we hope, is still there. Brent's, he can't get on the field. This year it's Latu who disappeared, and Mitchell. So I mean, we, maybe we hit it with Richardson. I hope so, but so far that certainly isn't impactive. And that's your highest pick. So and I think the fact that that's the first time I've heard it, and it was kind of funny that it was directly opposed to what Steichen said 2 days before, is that we are not close. And, in that respect, I think that's a much better way to look at it. And, and instead of being delusional and thinking you're a play away or, we're going to develop this guy and that guy, you got to figure now you're just not good enough, and you haven't been good enough for a while. And it's time to make some real changes.
I have simply said this, and I thought that when Chris said that Friday, that solidified it, considering it was a 180 compared to what Shane had to say 3 days prior, and then understanding the quarterback situation. Simply put, I feel very confident in saying this ain't it. This ain't it. That's it. I mean, that's really all. And I kind of wonder why Jim Irsay has not taken a similar path here. Why trust into something that clearly has been so damn off and not worked, especially in the past 4 years when it's been magnified? Why give that year number 9 and finally think that you're going to believe in something that's going to turn, Rick?
Yeah, I think that's really fair, John, and I think that position is shared by I would say the overwhelming majority of Colt Nation. I don't think there's any doubt. Wherever I go, I know that is the feeling. To me, the immediate, let's just go immediate first, okay? The immediate things that have happened here in the last week, to me, are very predictable. If any, when I was asked, the last week of the season what was going to happen, this exactly was my prediction, and I base it on these facts. I think if you go back to my interview with Jim in August, and not to pat myself on the back, but that is the gold standard in terms of interviews with Jim, simply because he is always more candid with me, sometimes to a fault. And, it goes to our background, our 40-year background together. And, at that point in time, he put lavish praise on both Chris and on Steichen. He said Chris was and this has obviously now been written a lot, but at that night he said he was a blue chip GM, and he said that Steichen was the next Shula. So I think there really is a genuine respect for those guys. But I think the overwhelming, more important than that, I think that sets the tone, but I think overwhelmingly the more important part of it is Richardson. And you and myself and a lot of people knew that when Chris Ballard drafted Richardson, that he was buying some time. And I'm not saying that he did that to buy in time. I think he did it because he thought the kid has great, great talent. But at the same time, when you draft a young quarterback, you buy yourself a little bit more time. I think you'll agree with me on that. And so I think what this statement is at this point is that Steichen and Ballard and Richardson are tied at the hip. And they're tied at the hip, and I think the mandate, I don't know this for sure, but my gut feeling is the mandate from Jim is this. You three guys fix it, and I'll give you 1 year to fix it. And then if you don't fix it, then Armageddon will be here. And I believe that totally. I believe that, I believe we're in the ninth inning here, literally. And I think because of the Richardson, the investment in Richardson, the fourth pick in the draft, enough faith in Steichen, and basically, this draft pick, let him live it out. I think now, though, however, after 2 years of it, I think they're on the line totally. I think it is a must season now. It is a make-or-break season for those guys.
So Rick Venturi on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. It's funny because he's tied guys at the hip before and then ended up untying them, if you remember. Not the quarterback included, but
I'm
yeah.
not saying, yeah, exactly. Going back, we can go back to the Pagano and that deal, and I think that the context I'm using is different here.
Sure.
I think the fact that they drafted Richardson in the lottery, the fact that Steichen is supposed to be a quarterback guru, and I think this is kind of last chance you here. You three guys, I put all the faith in the world in you, but it's now or never, and you're tied that way. You all three make it, or you're all three, gone. That's just my gut feeling.
Hey, Rick, I am curious because I've noticed this, and I'm sure you have as well, and this mostly comes from fans and maybe some media folks too, but the bar is set so incredibly low for this franchise, for this team, and this quarterback right now. What is the goal here? I mean, what is the goal you think for them to continue on coming up next year? I mean, what do they have to do? Both quarterback and for example, I guess you'd say all three. Quarterback, head coach, and general manager. What do you think the level of where is the bar for them to reach to get yet another vote of approval that this was the right thing to do?
Yeah, and there's, I think there's some other things involved. The defense was so bad, it was just indefensible. I can give you numbers of the 11 categories that mattered in defense. They were 23rd or worse in 9 of them. I mean, it was atrocious. People saw finally in the New York Giants game, things that I've been saying for 3 years. Obviously that has changed. But defensively, you got to be a lot better. This has got to change. You got to be a lot better. Special teams let us down in Denver and New York Giants, and then we can't win without a passing game. Throw that all together. Put those 3 guys back at the top of the class. One, you got to select a great defensive coordinator. I don't know if anybody over there is capable of making that choice. We'll see. I've offered my expertise if they wanted me to sit in and help them make that
I'm
selection.
sorry. That's all. Now, have you offered it up to them? Do they know?
Not to do it. I've offered my services to select.
That's what I mean. What was their response to that? What was their response?
I haven't heard back. So anyway, that's fine. What the hell do I know about it?
No, I don't know.
But
listen, it's not like they've proven capable of much. I would agree with you on that. Yeah.
But see, the problem. The reason I get into that is, X and O football in the NFL is very nuanced, and if you don't really know it, how do you know what you're getting? You get buzzwords. You get. You get names. Bradley was a name. You get big names. You hire names, and yet you don't really know what you're getting. But to get back to your question, I think next year, if this isn't a playoff team and a highly improved team and a quarterback that can go out and throw in the mid-range, I think it's over.
All right. Who do you have in mind while we're here? Because I don't want to forget. Defensive coordinator-wise.
As far as the DC, I mean,
if they return your call, I guess, for this, yeah.
They've got, they've got some, they've got names. I mean, Anarumo has had, he really had some highlights. When they were on the Super Bowl run, the defense was as good as Burrow. Really, the defense was the most underrated part of the Cincinnati team, and then they fell off the cliff. Why did they fall off the cliff? I began to watch some tape on them. Dennis Allen, when he was the defensive coordinator before he became the head coach, he had really done a great job in New Orleans. He really had. I mean, they went from a team that was winning 45-44, with him. They became, I think, 4 years in a row, top 15 in points given up, in top 10 in 3 of them. I've looked at his tape. I like him. And there's different guys. First of all, I like systems. The last thing that I want, I can't stand any more simplistic football. area, Friday night high school zone. I've watched years of it here. I can't even watch it anymore. You realize that we come close to leading the league in pass percentage every single year. I mean, it's just awful. And it doesn't matter if it's Stafford or if it's Drew Lock. I mean, because we're playing so soft in there, we got to get – it's not just pressure and blitzing. It's aggressive coverages, more man, more press, more matchups in zones. And what I look for, if I were going to get – if I'm not going to get a name – and it's just not the name. I would have to put the guy through a long interview, hard interview, and talk to him about game plans and specific things that are really important, not just arbitrary deals. But if not, then I want somebody with nuanced systems, somebody that comes from the Fangio system. Even though they got beat last night, I think the Flores system. And the best in the business right now, and they've got a couple of good assistants that I'd like to talk to, is the Spagnuolo system. I mean, those defenses are not that, zone Tampa 2 or in this case single high cover hawk 3. I mean, I can't watch that stuff. That is not, you're not being aggressive. You're not taking anything away. And the numbers are just horrendous. I mean, 29th in total defense, 26th in the pass, 30th in pass percentage, the 3 years in a row scoring 28, 28, 24, and the worst of all, fourth quarter defense number 32. So we need a total revamping, but we need a total movement away from the style of guys that we've been hiring.
So Rick Venturi, he's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I love the fact that you said, hey, I'm right here. I don't know why they wouldn't lean. I mean, it's not like what they're doing so far has worked. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Well, my don't get me wrong. Don't take it the wrong way. My coaching days are in the rearview mirror. But I still know ball, and I know good coaches from bad coaches.
It's Rick Venturi on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. So what's redeemable? We'll stay on defense because then we'll get to the quarterback coming up in the next segment here and his future. But what's redeemable, you think? Let's just say, for example, you bring in somebody that you like. What's the redeemable quality position-wise or name-recognizable guys-wise that you think, all right, you bring him back? Because running backs become such a dirty term around here. If you're not talking about the Pacers, who do you think they can run it back with regardless of the circumstances as the new defensive coordinator?
Yeah, 3 words make me sick right now. Okay, run it back, culture, and competition. All right, if you want to get me to go on for hours,
I do.
It's run it back. It's culture. And competition. Those are the 25 buzzwords. But anyway, all right, first of all, it's very difficult, and I mean this sincerely, and this is I've done for a living my whole life. It's very difficult for me to totally evaluate the defensive personnel on this football team. My gut feeling is it's much better than it's played. But the reason I say that is they just play basically basically a lined up, almost vanilla defense down in and down out. And they're never put in really advantage situations. They're never put in situations where they have the strategic advantage. And they're not very well coached fundamentally. You can see that in their angles and their tackling and things like that. I mean, I just feel like it's better. It's not great. There's not a lot of game changers. That's the problem. That's the whole problem with the team, is the team is not bad roster-wise, 53-man in and out, but it lacks the game changers, guys that turn the game around, particularly on the perimeter on both sides. Now, what do you have going on defense? First of all, the 2 areas that saved you in games that you were competitive was we actually did a pretty good job of stopping the run per play, and that's more important than the overall rush statistic. And that the Colts were 8th at a 4.2, and obviously the thing that saved them in certain games was the takeaways, number 6th in the league. They were able to take the ball away. Those two things really and truly are the only things that aren't just god awful. I put up a chart of the 11 big things on offense, and I color them in yellow or blue, and there are 9 yellows and those 2 blues. I think if you look at the personnel, I think they're very strong inside. I mean, I think when Buckner and Grover are in there together, I think that is really a top line. I think that's a really top-tier defensive tackle unit. Now, anybody that goes in beyond that is not capable. Anybody in any when they tell you there's depth, anybody that goes in behind, we get shredded. We are sound on the edges, but no one has turned into, despite draft picks, 1s, 2s, despite that, nobody has turned in to be a game changer. Pay is a really solid guy. He's got decent sack numbers, but he's not a guy that keeps you up nights on Tuesday nights. Same way with Dio. We gave up Autry for Dio. Autry's killing people. I mean, and then Latu, I see flashes, but I certainly don't see Will Anderson there. I don't see those kinds of things at all. He disappeared. So in other words, I don't think it's a liability, but also on the edge, I don't see guys that are turning the game around. And then our corners, I just don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, I think the corners are better, but in this system of soft zone, it's hard to evaluate them. I actually think Jones has a chance if you have an aggressive system that really gets in there and presses all day long. Kenny is still a really good nickel. Kenny Moore's still a really good nickel. Cross, I think, now is a real legitimate box strong safety. Buckner's gone way backwards. Our linebackers are productive. I think Franklin, obviously, he's made the Pro Bowl and everything. I think he's pretty good. I think speed is okay. The problem that I have with both those guys is they miss a lot of tackles in space. They make a lot of tackles, but they miss a lot of tackles. And this goes back to the point of let's not overrate our own. Let's just don't go, because what happens is that starts at the top, goes to the coaching staff, goes to the media, goes to the fan base, and then worst of all, it goes to the players, and they think they're great, So, I mean, I think you have a nucleus, particularly with those 2 tackles, and I think primarily with Buckner. But after that, I can't say there's a lot of guys that you're sitting there worrying about. But I also I would just like to see a good, creative, flexible coaching staff come in here and utilize these guys. I think they can be a little bit better.
All right, Rick, sit tight. We're going to come back and talk about your thoughts on the quarterback going into year 3. Is that cool?
Absolutely.
Rick Venturi and Colts fans, a segment or an hour, if you will, that you have to hear. We're coming back regarding year 3 and Anthony Richardson in year 3 of the head coach Shane Steichen with Rick Venturi coming up next. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
Ride with JMV.
Give me my theme music.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
And welcome back to Must Listen with Rick Venturi regarding the Colts season. He rejoins on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. So let's go with year number 3 with the quarterback, Anthony Richardson. What we have seen, which is not a lot, what you're going on into year 3, what you expect, and then ultimately how you think this thing is going to go, Rick.
Yeah, I tell you what, I don't think we know. I don't think anybody knows. Here's what I see at this point. What I see at this point is a quarterback who is I would say a two-trick pony, okay? He's a guy who is a beast as a runner. He's really running back too. He's got the 5.7 average. He's tough in the red zone. I mean, when he runs the football, he is a beast. And if you don't run him, you're crazy. I mean, the one thing that they really changed after he came back, they got into all this psychobabble about why he was better. But the reason he was better was they went back and they ran an NCAA offense from the first quarter on and had him carry the ball and become a tremendous complement to JT and become a tremendous threat in short yardage and in the red zone. So, there's no question about that. He is a beast. He really is almost more of a wildcat quarterback. He's more Taysom Hill than he is Stroud, to be honest with you, if you want to really look at it. And he also, his other trick is he throws the deep ball really well. He's not afraid to throw it. He's actually accurate in the deep part of the field. He'll put it out there with strength. Doesn't have to be on platform because of his athletic, stuff. His feet, legs, all that stuff is good. But he reminds me, and you may have heard me say this before on pregames, he reminds me of an NBA player who is either a slam dunk guy or a three-point shooter. He has no mid-range game. He has no mid-range jump shot. And, what happens there, and that's why his percentage is so low and our passing statistics are so bad, is because, there's nothing in between those two things. It's either line of scrimmage plays or really way downfield. And I don't think that's sustainable. I mean, I don't think you can win in the NFL with those two things alone. At this point, the things I talked about, the things that are good, I mean, the negatives, we all know they're right in front of us. 15 starts out of a possible 34. Last year, 47.7 accuracy. That's Tim Tebow range in 2011. You got a quarterback rating of 61.7. What happens is you have some real strengths. I also think he does have a real strength that I like. He has a selective amnesia, if you will. He's a kid that no matter how bad the game is going, if the game is close in the last 2 minutes, he has proven that he can pull it out, that he will play. For some reason, the game kind of slows down to him in the last 2 minutes. But the key, John, is going to be can he develop in the offseason, in training camp, can he get that mid-range passing game? And that comes down to three things. It comes down, number one, to anticipation. A lot of people worried about him coming out. Could he really anticipate, receivers in the NFL getting open? In the NFL, you have to anticipate those inside 14, 15-yard routes. You can't wait till a guy gets open. You throw a guy open in the NFL, you throw to open receivers in the collegiate game. That's why it's so different. Number two, he needs to acquire pinpoint accuracy. That's in the NFL, that's throwing the ball to a guy coming across to 1 yard in front of him, eye high, not on the back hip. I mean, there's picture window accuracies and there's portal accuracies. And in the NFL, in the red zone, on third down, all those areas where pinpoint accuracy is important, he's got to get it. And then there's the area of touch. There's times that he'll be throwing a quick little pivot route to downs or a swing route to a back, and he'll airmail it. He'll throw it too hard, he'll throw it over. And I think that's the critical stuff right there. I've talked to different people. I consult with, John Gruden is my good friend, as you know. We talk weekly. I talk with Belichick weekly on defensive stuff, John on offensive stuff. Some people think that they can bring it. They can get that out of him. They can get him to improve on that. I don't know. I'm ambivalent. I'm not sure if you can or you can't, because he doesn't have mechanical issues, believe it or not. I mean, he has a really nice delivery. He doesn't have a long arm delivery. He doesn't throw like a baseball pitcher. He's got a nice compact ball, comes out tight spiral. But, the result has to be there. In other words, you got to connect the dots. He literally has to connect the dots. And if they can get that out of him, you have a chance to be pretty damn good because of the positives. But if you don't, I don't think you're ever going to go forward, because really the amazing thing when you sit back and look at the season from a distance, the only time we really look like an NFL team throwing is when Joe was in there. There's no question about it. Joe, put up 33 points at Jacksonville, and 34 in Jacksonville, and lost 33 of the Giants, and lost 26 against, last week. And the only time that we look like an NFL passing game in those intermediate areas is with Flacco. So, this is going to be the challenge, and I think everything is on the line. I think it's really two things are on the line. You have to fix the defense completely, because that's abortive, and you have to fix the quarterback. If you do those two things, then maybe you're a playoff team. If you don't, then you stay in this malaise of 17-17, where you're not awful, but you're never above water.
Hey, Rick, are you apprehensive to believe that a quarterback with those missing pieces in their quarterback game right now are able to create that, in year number 3, or as they get older, as they mature? And then where do you factor in a lot of times his lack of health? And we saw that again raise its head at the end of the season. I know obviously not the mechanics of it, but the throwing and what you brought up is problematic, but you also factor in his availability.
Well, and that's the franchise dilemma, because you can't. If you drafted him 4th, you didn't draft him to come in here and be Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, Phillip Rivers. He is never going to be that type of, drop back, classic NFL, great accuracy, all those type of things that you have with those kinds of guys. This is a totally different guy coming in, and I like I said, I'm ambivalent. I have my doubts about it, and as far as the health, I'm getting a little off the tangent here. As far as the health, the dilemma is you have to run him like you're running. If the kind of guy he is, and the only way that he's really a threat to people is if he creates that extra gap, that extra running back, and he then makes Jonathan better, he makes the offensive line, he makes everybody better. But that's the way you have to play him. So, you're never really going to protect him. And unfortunately, stylistically, he isn't a guy that really avoids contact. He almost seeks it. He plays much more, like a power forward than he does a point guard. And so, that is the dilemma. The reality is 15 out of 34 is, that's what's real. That's realistic right now.
Did they err in judgment in punishing him, benching him, or at the time just believing Joe Flacco was better and tried to win games by sitting him down? Was that a misjudgment?
I thought that was botched totally. Not so much the benching, but how it was handled. and then the narrative that surrounded it. I thought the other good point that Chris Ballard made, other than not being close, was that when they benched him, I understood it. He was drowning. Remember, that's the term he used. He was drowning, and he was. He was underwater. He was overwhelmed. He was really losing it. He was totally off the mark. And I think the coaching staff and Steichen said, you know what, we're not going to win with him right now. He's a mess. Let's go with Flacco. Flacco had played good ball, when he was hurt. And let's go with Flacco and see if we can save this season right now, here and now, and we'll worry about it later. And if you would have come out and said that to me, I'd have been fine with it. I really would have. I'd have been fine with it right then. Now, Flacco failed miserably. So, that part of it didn't work. So they, obviously now they go back to him. Now you're saying it's not about this season. It's back to developing the quarterback. So you go back to him, which was all natural. And, he played some pretty good football. He won us. He bailed the defense out against the Patriots. He bailed them out versus the Jets. I mean, he had a string there of pretty good football. But here's what I didn't like about it. First of all these players popping off about this and that, just crap. I mean, there's no need to have these player councils. I mean, and if you have them, what they're for, if they don't like the food or something, a player council should never, ever have input into who plays and who doesn't play. That's ridiculous. And then Steichen and company allowed the narrative, actually fed it, that maybe he wasn't coming up to standards emotionally, leadership, work ethic, and all that. And even if that's true, that should never, ever be out there. That narrative will plague that kid forever, no matter what anybody says. And it was totally unnecessary. To me, it was more of a cover your-know-what reason for benching him rather than just telling the truth he wasn't playing good enough. I think in that sense. And then the other thing I'll say is that he was elected captain of the team, and if it took a year and a half for you to discipline as a coaching staff, then you guys have malpracticed from the beginning. Because I know this, the guys that I've been around, the best coaches I've been around, and I've been around some great ones, if you're late for a meeting, that'll be the last time you're ever late, and that will be nipped in the bud in the first week of your career, not a year later. So, like I said, I think that was – I don't think the benching itself was a mistake. I think there was a reason for it. I think we got a lot of false vibes out of there, a lot of false negatives. And even I will say this, even Ballard, basically pointed out very subtly that Shane's got to be a hell of a lot better in messaging.
We'll get to Shane in just a second. One final thing before we hit a break. Ballard mentioned competition at quarterback for Richardson. What do you think is necessary competition-wise for him, and what did you think of that statement made on Friday?
Well, we mentioned competition 10 times, and, that sounds good. And now that I think that is now the new justification for if we have competition along the line, top to bottom, then that's going to put pressure on everybody, and everybody now is going to play good, and our culture is going to be good because we're going to be accountable because we have competition. I mean, to me, when you bring players in, you bring them in to make you better, not to psychologically push somebody. You bring guys in, like I talked about Houston, the Mixons, the Diggs, the Hunters, the Autreys. You bring those guys in to make your team better, period. You replace guys that aren't good enough, because part of the reason the Colts aren't good, we're talking always, now it's always we don't have a good culture. You know what the bottom line is? Right now, we're not good enough talent-wise or coaching-wise to be any better than we are, okay? And all that other stuff is rhetoric. That's what it is. Now, what you want to do at quarterback, I mean, I don't know. Do you want to beat him out? The only reason you're still here is because he saved you another year. He bought you another year. Do you need a really good backup quarterback? Absolutely, just from a pure health standpoint. I mean, Joe came back and played really good here at the end again. So, Minshew saved us a year ago. So, do you need a really good quarterback? Yeah. But, I mean, if you're going to bring in Justin Fields, then, that's the same guy. I mean, in a way, that's the same guy. So, I mean, I don't know. Do we need a terrific backup quarterback? Absolutely, because he's unreliable health-wise.
So, Rick Venturi, quick break. We'll come back, and I want to get your thoughts in closing here to this hour on Shane Steichen going into year number 3, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Sit tight with Rick Venturi. Hopefully you've heard it. If not, podcast 1075thefan.com. Rick Venturi returns on the other side. 93.5, 1075 The Fan.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Hey, back with you. Rick Venturi rejoins the State of the Colts after the 2024 campaign, and Rick rejoins us right now. So going into year number 3 of Shane Steichen, what have we seen so far, and your expectations going into the third year for the head coach?
Well, I think when you hired Steichen, you hired really 3 things. You hired a head coach, you hired a quarterback whisperer, and you hired a play caller, an offensive coordinator, really. I think that he is a very good X and O guy. I mean, I think he's switched back and forth seamlessly, from guys like Flacco to Richardson. He's kind of been able to handle that. Usually comes out with a pretty good game plan at the beginning of the game. Usually in that sense, I do think he's a good X and O guy. Now, what has shown up over the course of 2 years is there some things that he's got to get better at as a head coach. I think, number one, as a head coach, he's got to have a much more, I would say, uncomfortable team. There's got to be accountability day after day after day. If you can't do it and you don't come to the level of winning, then we've got to bring the hammer down. I know that the toughest year that I ever spent in coaching was when I worked for Belichick and Saban together. Every day I walked in that Cleveland Brown that complex, I was nervous, almost nauseated. But you know what? I rose to the occasion, and it was the best coaching year I ever had. But that constant accountability, that discomfort has to be there. There cannot be complacency. And the coaching staff has to set that tempo. You can't count on this new word competition to do that. That has to be set from the top. I think he really has to improve in messaging. I think basically I was always taught as a young coach that when you talk to the media, you're talking to the media, but you're sending messages directly. You're talking to your team through the media. And, we've had a lot of vague narratives along the way, the benching and all that stuff that we've already talked about, the injury situation. And, I think there's just got to be a much more firmness, directness, and be candid. I mean, in this market, if you're honest with this market and you're straightforward, they're going to back you. They're going to hang in with. This is not a harsh market that comes to get you every day. And then I think at the end of the day, there's got to be a physicality, both mentally and physically, that has to be with this team. This team is never ready to start the season. It doesn't have mental toughness right now. And you cannot come out of, you wonder, well, why do we miss tackles? Well, I can give you a whole clinic on why we miss tackles, but one of the reasons is we never tackle. And then we don't play guys in preseason games. So when do you think you're going to get that? There's a mental toughness and there's a physical toughness, and you have to throw caution to the wind and get back to some of that stuff if you're going to recapture, what this team needs to be.
All right, final thing in closing with Rick Venturi on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Were you surprised that more major moves from Jim weren't made, or when you were reflective back on that interview you had with him in the preseason in the press box, blue chip, Don Shula-like, did that tell you all you needed to know about the time that both were going to get?
No, but I think that was a point of emphasis. I don't think necessarily it was a turning point. I use that as an example to say that, in a sense, I think he genuinely believed in those guys. I think he basically wants them to do well. I don't think that was I don't think that was something that he just threw out there. I think he believes it, but I think now it's gone beyond that. Now I think, okay, you've got Richardson. You two guys wanted Richardson. I've got the GM, the head coach, and the quarterback in place. And usually everybody says that's the holy trinity of a franchise. And so now, without saying it in that press conference, without saying it, I think basically what he's telling you is this is your last shot. You get it done or you're finished. I mean, I think that was the whole thing.
So Rick Venturi right there in the Andy Miller Automotive Group hotline. Just awesome stuff for this hour. I can't thank you enough.
Oh, John, I always enjoy being with you. You know.
Yeah, let me know when they call you.
My speech is always going to be unfiltered. So, whatever. But hopefully, the fans will appreciate the candidness.
Yeah, there's no question about that. We'll catch up around the draft again. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, John.
Rick, thank you very much. The best of the family, buddy.
All right, thank you, bud.
Rick Venturi on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. We'll get to the podcast a lot more. Heavy duty right there with Rick, and I love that conversation. Jeremiah Johnson on the other side from the Fieldhouse. Big one in the NBA with the Pacers and the Cavaliers tonight. We'll get into that and a lot more. Hour 3 straight ahead on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You're fat. 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I know it. I love Rick Venturi on here for an hour or two. Podcast 107.5thefan.com. Yeah. You knew that it was going to be good when it came out of the gate with Delusional about 3 or 4 times. That was outstanding. Podcast 107.5thefan.com. Noah Eagle tomorrow. and a busy rest of the week that has us on Thursday at Tom's Watch Bar downtown. So I'd love to see you at Tom's Watch Bar in Illinois downtown coming up on Thursday. Meantime, with the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, we've got the back half of the home and home with the Cavaliers and the Pacers at the Fieldhouse tonight. Sunday, it was a Pacer road win in Cleveland. Tonight, same two teams at 7 o'clock. And Jeremiah Johnson from Pacers TV is on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline right now. Hello, JJ.
John, great to be with you. It's a fun matchup at the Fieldhouse tonight.
How about that? This is one hell of a January matchup. I think this is what we need in January, and especially in terms of the way that the Pacers have been playing since the turn of the calendar.
Yeah, the best part to me is the Pacers are playing well, and they've also been playing some good competition. I mean, to have a win at Cleveland, where only one other team had a win, that was Atlanta Thanksgiving week, is impressive. But during this stretch, I mean, they did play the Thunder. Now, they lost that game, but they were right there. They played the Celtics twice. They've went out west, and before the Kings got hot, the Pacers beat them by 28 or 30 points. And almost since then, they made a coaching change, and they haven't lost. So it's been a really good mix of teams that the Pacers have played, but it's not just beating up on the Wizards of the world. So I think that's what's impressive, and that's what also makes tonight's matchup so exciting is the Cavs bring it every single night. They brought it on Sunday, and they couldn't hang with the Pacers. We'll see what happens in round two.
Jeremiah Johnson's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline again. No Pacers TV tonight. That is on TNT, and, of course, you can hear it right here beginning at 7 o'clock, or check that 6:30, I'm sorry, on The Fan as the pregame show. I'm curious, Tyrese Halliburton, I know Rick Carlisle told Swebo this morning that the way that he put it, it was not a severe situation. What's your expectation for tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doubtful, and I listened to that interview as well, and I haven't had a chance to see or be around anyone other than that. And doubtful, I think the designation is a 25% chance of playing. So I'll answer the question with the designation. I'll say it's doubtful. And the other thing you have to look at is with this trip to Paris, it is a little bit of a break in the schedule where you might be able to buy him some time to heal while not missing as many games compared to if it was a stretch of 5 games in 7 days. I mean, there's no back-to-backs. And after you play that game on Saturday, you'll play 2 games over a span of like 10 days. So if it's something that's lingering, if it has been bothering him at times this season and he needs a break, there is an opportunity. I'm not going to say that means he won't play this week, but if that's the route they choose to go, it is almost the best-case scenario of the timing of it.
So, JJ, he didn't play in the second half. He was ruled out after the half. Pacers down double digits to start the third and then go on a run, put up 37 in that third, and then ultimately in the fourth close out Cleveland. Was it more about what they did dramatically offensively or what they were doing with 18 and 22 respectively in the third at home against Cleveland? In the back half of that was the level of importance to get them that win, because I thought defensively was equally as impressive as to what they did offensively in the second half.
I would say more so. I mean, Cleveland is a team that, you have a lot of different weapons, and you can't just key in on any one player. And how rare is it in the NBA that you say a game concludes and the difference was the full court pressure defense? I mean, you don't think of that as being a key and something you need to go to. We saw it at times during those playoff series. I remember specifically some of those matchups that the Pacers played where you just made it hard on the opponent to get to half court. And by the time they did get to half court, then you look up and the shot clock's down to maybe 12 or 10. You don't have as much time to really get into your offense. So the decision was, I think, to be more physical. That's obvious. That can be in the half court or that can be in the full court. But it was a little bit of a mindset that you're going to hound them, you're going to make it difficult for them. And I think you accurately pointed out either on the air or on social media about, when they put it on the floor, you get after them. And they really caused the Cavs so many problems. And I'm surprised it did, because you'd think everyone has tried everything to try to beat the Cavs, and no one has had much success this season. Maybe the Pacers found a little bit of a formula. That's why I'm so fascinated to see how the Cavs respond and what the Pacers have for Cleveland in Game 2 tonight.
I'd watched a number of Cavaliers games because I was a believer. I still am, don't get me wrong, but I had not seen a team defensively with that point, that focus of going after the dribble. And JJ, it wasn't just the bigs when they put it on the floor. They went after both Mitchell and Garland, too, on the dribble drives, wherever they went.
Well, until really Sunday, you'd think that maybe Kenny Atkinson figured out the best way for Garland and Mitchell to coexist, because while they've had some good moments the last couple of years, maybe there was a little bit of a concern whether that is the ideal backcourt. I think of them as maybe both score-first guards / point guards. They can both handle the ball, but maybe they're not as good of ball handlers maybe as you thought. And maybe that's a little bit of what the Pacers saw. And I think you take advantage, too, where Cleveland has the good guards and the good bigs, but they're maybe not as good on the wing, especially at shot creation. Now, they do have some guys that can excel in the catch and shoot three-pointers. And, let's be honest, the Pacers did get a little luck. There was probably 4 or 5 instances where they had a catch and shoot opportunity, and they didn't make the three. And if they did, that crowd gets into the game and things could go the other way. But momentum's a big thing. And once the Pacers started to go on that run, it just felt like the Cavs had no answer. And I'm not sure that I've seen too many 9-minute and 30 stretches against a good team where they go without making a field goal. I mean, I think it was 9:45 in the third quarter. Mobley had an and one, and the next made field goal was with under a minute to play. They had some free throw attempts in there, but it was just a sight to see. And actually, if you need a blueprint for how to play Pacers defense, that was it in the third quarter.
I hesitate, and by the way, Cavaliers-Pacers tonight, tip time 7 o'clock at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. I'm hesitant to say, because it worked so well on Sunday, and I don't want it to go down the tubes later on tonight in the second matchup, but I thought that Miles and Siakam versus Allen and Mobley was winners Pacers, and I think that's more problematic than anybody thought it might be for Cleveland. And I don't know if you can switch up Allen to Siakam and then Mobley to Miles, which I think would be more beneficial with the way that they played, but I don't think Cleveland would end up doing that. I like that matchup where other teams, I think they struggle in a matchup like that against Cleveland. I think for the Pacers, that was a good thing as we witnessed on Sunday.
It was such an unusual game and a tale of two halves, but even in that first half, we were trying to figure out if there was something wrong with Jared Allen. He left after what seemed like a normal bit of playing time in the first quarter. We didn't see him around the bench. I was trying to inquire whether there was an injury update. He did finally return, and he played maybe only the final 2 minutes of the second quarter. So even in that first half, you didn't see as many minutes with the two bigs. They were sort of choosing to go small more than I think they normally do. And I was a little surprised by that because I figured they would take that opportunity to see what they had with Mobley and Allen against Miles and Pascal, but maybe it wasn't as successful as they would like. And maybe there was a little bit of an injury situation that we aren't aware of. But the Pacers were able to attack the small lineups. And then, as you mentioned, when both of them were on the floor, maybe there wasn't enough ball handling, maybe there wasn't enough shot creation, and maybe it was just difficult for the Cavs to get into what they do best. For whatever reason, it was advantage Pacers in that front court on Sunday.
Yeah, and you saw the advantage from the bench as well. And let's give a lot of love to Jarris Walker. His game was top-notch on both ends and definitely necessary. If you could see a more consistent level, that to me, getting that consistently is better than making any trade deadline deal, along with getting Aaron Nesmith back. And hopefully this is the beginning of something that we can expect from him.
It was outstanding. I love it when he gets in the game, and his game is not predicated on offense, but if he hits one of his first shots, it just makes everything else go for him. And one of those three-pointers that he hit was huge. I think one of them was like towards the end of a shot clock. But it just seemed to open up everything else defensively. And his physicality, that was, I think, one of the reasons they wanted to draft him where they did, is because of the way he could play defense. And I don't think we saw it as much as a rookie. Didn't get that consistent playing time, maybe a little even inconsistent with the playing time he got early in this second season. But you have to realize the age that he is, the talent he has, and as you mentioned, if he continues to grow and to improve, I do agree with you. That's better than any acquisition you can make. And go through and look at some some guys that are all-stars in the league and what they did in their first, second, and third seasons, it takes guys a little bit of time to really come into their own, and you have to be careful of giving up on someone too early. And I'm not even insinuating that anyone's given up, but I think fans maybe expect to see immediate success, and sometimes it does take time. But it was an outstanding game, and he was a big part of that defensive effort in that second half.
Yeah, and by the way, JJ's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. The glue was significant, and that's Andrew Nembhard. We describe him as that as such, and it was a damn big deal on Sunday in Cleveland, too.
Yeah, I mean, and think about this as well. So I thought Ben Shepherd going in the place of Tyrese Halliburton provided them just a little bit more defensive physicality. But if you consider Shepherd and Nembhard, you really understand what you were missing during that stretch in November, when I know you were concerned with how they were playing. I think everyone was a little bit concerned. You think, okay, well, you've got your best players, your Siakam, your Halliburton, your Turner, Mathurin. Those guys were all playing, so you expected everything to work. But this team has to have Andrew Nembhard and then at least either Shepherd or Nesmith to really be able to play the way they need to play. And so Nembhard was outstanding. You knew he'd want the ball in his hands in the fourth quarter to hit some big shots. I don't think he called bank, but once that one went in, you knew it was the Pacers tonight.
It was awesome. I know you got to run here and go meet up with Rick Carlisle. No Pacers TV, which stinks. You get it on TNT coming up later on tonight, and let the records reflect that nobody from TNT would come on this show, much like our good friend Jeremiah Johnson from Pacers TV. No availability for that, but that's where you can watch it tonight, and of course you can hear it right here on the Fan. And we'll catch up on the road in Detroit coming up on Thursday. The Pistons and Cade Cunningham much better, winning in New York last night. Philadelphia back at home on Sunday, and then to Paris they go for back-to-backs with San Antonio.
Yep, looking forward to a little bit of a different viewpoint tonight. Maybe I'll be a little more active on social media, but I will be talking with Rick Carlisle shortly. You can usually find that on the Pacers social media channels. And hard to believe, John, tonight, game 41, so the season officially at the halfway point. And to be through 40, 22-18 when you were, 10 and 15 at one point, it's been quite a turnaround.
It is getting real now. Hey, who's doing the game for TNT tonight?
As you mentioned that, I'm not actually aware. I didn't really I did a little probably less prep tonight since I didn't have as much that I had to do, so I've not seen that. So, unfortunately, I can't answer that question for you.
All right. Hey, enjoy the environment. It should be a fun Tuesday night at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, and we'll check in with you further down the road, buddy. Thank you.
All right. Sounds good, John.
Jeremiah Johnson, Pacers TV. Again, that's on TNT. Check and see who's doing that game tonight. I'm assuming is it Van Gundy and Brian, what's his name? All over it. Hey, by the way, podcast for JJ right there on 1075thefan.com. A lot of reaction we're going to get to Rick Venturi. I left you about 45 minutes for that reaction, and then we have an extra for you coming up after 6 o'clock tonight. Yeah, Brian Anderson and Stan Van Gundy. I just couldn't remember Brian's last name. Brian Anderson and Stan Van tonight in the house for TNT. Thank you, Chris Denary. I will always stay with the local TV, always. My friends, and I enjoy it the most. But Brian Anderson and Stan Van Gundy have the call for you on TNT later on tonight. All right, let's do some calls, and we'll do that until the end of the show, and then a little extra for you after 6 o'clock with Anything Goes before we get to the Pacer pregame show. 239, check that, the Pacer pregame radio show at 6:30 tonight with Pat Boylan at lead anchor for you. Should be a good time on a Tuesday night here in downtown Indy. Ryan's at 239-1070 right now. Hello, Ryan.
Hey, man, thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir, Ryan. Go ahead.
So I just quickly wanted to piggyback on some of the things actually that JJ talked about, and it's really, especially after this Cavs win, starting to just irk me. And listen, I live in Tampa, but grew up in Indiana. I follow all 82 games as much as I can. Unfortunately, like you said, we have to suffer through TNT tonight because I love Chris and Quinn. Nobody does it better. But that aside, I am so sick of what I see and perceive as big mainstream outlets as well as other casual fans really just leaving the Pacers out of the conversation. And I understand they had a rough start to this season. I truly do. But that being said, knowing this team, following this team, I can tell you that without their three best defenders in Nimhard, Neesmith, and even Shepard at the beginning of the season, losing both backup centers within the first 2 weeks of the season, there's just this team is built different than everybody else. And they took Boston they went to the Eastern Conference Finals last season. Although they did get swept in four, Boston has admitted that was the toughest run of their championship run. The Pacers were the hardest team to get through. Everybody constantly dogged them for playing quote unquote hurt teams. I'm just like, when are the Pacers finally going to get that notoriety to say, look, they're here? I mean, is it going to take a championship? Is that what it's really going to take?
Let me tell you something. I don't know if this is going to ease your mind, because I'm pretty sure you're going to stick with this opinion, and that's fine. But you think about the Cavaliers are 33-5, and there's rarely a word said about them, right? It is always in the East about Boston, about the Knicks, about the Bucks. So that's just some things, especially this point of the season. The NBA is going to be touting those superstar so-called teams. And, yeah, I mean, the Cavaliers have the best record in the NBA, and they're fighting for as much airtime as the Pacers, as you suggest, are as well. So it's just kind of a rite of passage. And I think that's something I used to get mad about, but I don't get mad about it any longer, because at some point you continue to play at a high level and you will get that recognition. But it's always kind of like this, as JJ mentioned, up until basically you get to the halfway mark or to the All-Star break, and then the wealth is a little bit more shared then.
No, that's a fair take, and that's why I listened to you, and that's why I called in to talk to you.
Got it, man. Thank you, Ryan. You call in again from Tampa, Florida. We appreciate that. From Tampa we go to Brooklyn, New York, and Mike is at 239-1070 next. Hello, Mike.
JMV, what's up? I enjoyed the Rick Venturi interview.
I just turned him loose, man. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, really interesting insights from him, as always. For me, there's like one question that's really at the top of the list. So I'm going to pose it to you because you probably have the best perspective. Right now, I mean, it's early in the process, but right now, today, what is your gut instinct telling you about this Colts hierarchy? Are they really going to make the drastic, radical changes needed to fix this team, or is it just going to be a superficial, window dressing, same old type deal?
When you heard Rick reference, we were asking about the defensive coordinator, and he said, I don't know if I trust anybody over there to make that decision. Well, even in a more broad spectrum, I don't trust anybody over there to get this operation where it needs to go right now. And that's an indictment. I mean, it is, but it's the truth. And it's not an axe to grind or anything like that, like everybody over there. But do I have any trust that they're going to be able to move the needle on something to where the past 4 seasons it simply has not moved? No, I don't. It's one of those things where I think a lot of people, Mike, are in the same category here. It is, we'll believe it when we see it. I'm of a very trusting nature, but I am worn out from the past effects of the underwhelming nature of these seasons. And again, until further notice, that's exactly how I'm going to go into this. I would say I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to agree with you. I've touched on that defensive coordinator. That's like kind of the first domino that I'm looking to see because, Lou Anarumo or Dennis Allen or Wink Martindale will signify a radical change, but I'm praying to God it's not Steve Wilkes because that's just ballad Samo. Steve Wilkes, to me, is just a more aggressive form of Gus Bradley, and he's got that relationship with Ballard, which is another thing that drives me crazy with this organization since he's been there. This cronyism where you're hiring people who you're comfortable with, you have relationships with, instead of getting
and like you do with the players too. I mean, you bring back the players for similar reasons.
Yeah, so I'm hoping for like a radical, at least start out with that, a radical approach. And lastly, do you think there's any chance that Ballard and Irsay, make the no-brainer move that we've been talking about forever with Shane Steichen and finally convince him to turn over the play calling and concentrate on being a head coach? Because
I do not.
He's not a very good one.
Yeah, I do not. And I feel the same way, and I've said it. I think, and I've used the term swamped. When I think it was Chris that brought up Anthony Richardson drowning, and I think that Rick mentioned that last hour too as one of the reasons why they decided to bench him midseason. I think that Shane drowns too as the head coach. I think he gets swamped as the head coach with everything, and I think he would be much better. You have to be a part of everything as a coach, and he has yet to prove that he is higher level being a part of everything. We know he can X and O, and we know he loves offense, and we know he can scheme, and we know all of that. But to be an all-encompassing coach and to fully do what is expected of you, that is something we haven't seen. And again, it's one of those things, we'll believe it when we see it.
Yep, going back to Frank Reich, same type of deal with him. Never gave it up, and with Steichen, I mean, all he has to do is look from his own personal experience. The Eagles took off when Sirianni turned the offense over to him. So I don't understand why he can't, make the correlation.
Now, and that was an ultimatum too, was it not? From the higher ups, I mean, something's got to be done here. And I that's what I thought. And I mean, hell, they still
You're probably right.
They probably still would. Get rid of him if they lose in the divisional round this weekend. So yeah, it's what some teams are hardcore about, and the Colts kind of just let so many things slide, and then that becomes your identity, and that's become the Colts' identity, Mike.
Yep, absolutely. Unfortunately,
I appreciate you. Sounds like you're a little bit sick. Get over that cold you have there in Brooklyn, New York, brother.
Yep, thank you, brother. Take care.
All right, Mike in Brooklyn. Right there. Quick break. We'll come back. I got time for you on the other side of 239-1070. I know Fulton's lurking. We'll get to Fulton. We have Anything Goes coming up after 6 o'clock. We have Coheed and Cambria tickets to give away before 6. All right. About 20 minutes after 6 for Anything Goes. Up until this point in time, we can work in anything you want. Rick Venturi, his conversation. We'll start there. Cavs, Pacers round 2 tonight, and then IU down in Bloomington versus Illinois, especially after the way that IU half-assed things in a lot of that game in Iowa City on Saturday. Get a little IU conversation working here on the other side as well. Don't go anywhere. Your chance to win and your chance to get your point across, as it is the voice of the fan between 3 and 6 every Monday through Friday in the afternoon with 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
JMV.
Excuse me, Robo. Any special message for all the kids watching at home?
Stay out of trouble. 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Well, you want to do Coheed and Cambria right here, too? Check out the date for that show, would you, James, for me, too?
That will be Sunday, August 17th at Everwise.
August 17th. I don't know about anybody else. I cannot wait for the stinking summer. Hurry up, summer. Hurry up, spring. Number 9 at 239-1070. We'll go to see Coheed and Cambria on us. I think I got my man Daniel Butler's going to come on either tomorrow or Thursday from over at the Murrah Old National Center. They've got a lot of announcements to make about upcoming shows, and we'll get into that a little bit later on in the week. Tyrese Halliburton listed officially as out with what is now described as a mild strain of his left groin. This is according to Jeremiah Johnson, who was just in the scrum and put this on social media right after he was with us. Halliburton listed as day-to-day, and JJ also mentioned you go to Detroit coming up on Thursday, Philadelphia back at home at Gainbridge Fieldhouse on Saturday. And then you embark on that European Paris trip for the back-to-back with San Antonio. So we'll see how that's handled, but no Tyrese Halliburton tonight. Rick Carlisle adds that it is not a hamstring, and this, quote, is good news. JJ had that, but no Tyrese Halliburton later on tonight. This from Matt. There is nobody more insightful and honest about the Colts than Rick Venturi. Thanks for having me on, JMV. Great listen. I love having Rick Venturi on. If you missed any of it, the podcast at 1075thefan.com. Delusional was mentioned a couple of different times. It gets right to the point. That's exactly what you want. But when I tell you this, the Colts don't see accurately reality in their reflection. And when Rick and I have these conversations, it's not them dictating the terms. This is actually what's going on. You know, when it was asked of Ryan a little bit earlier, no, actually, I'm sorry. It was Mike in Brooklyn who said, you know, you do buy this right now. I can't buy it until I see some evidence of it. People think that, you know, there's an axe to grind. Or, you know, why are you always negative about Anthony Richardson? It's not negative. It's stinking reality. The same thing goes with the head coach. And the same thing really goes with the general manager. Hey, work that thing. You know what? Going into year number 9, it's about damn time. Work that thing, head coach and quarterback, in year number 3. But don't tell me something's working and is going to work if there's no evidence of it doing so. Again, if you want rear end sniffers, this is not the place. Rick Venturi podcast, 1075thefan.com, was extremely, per usual, fantastic a little bit earlier today. Jonathan is next at 239-1070. Jonathan, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey. Oh, great. Thank you. Were you referencing the Dan Butler from TV shows and movies, like the actor earlier?
I was not. He's a friend of this show that does a lot of stuff at the Murrah Old National Center.
Oh, that's cool. I just knew that the Dan Butler from, like, Frasier and stuff, he's from Fort Wayne originally. So
oh, really? Anyway. No. That's not who I was nor was I referencing Kevin Butler, who was a longtime place kicker for the Bears, or Brett Butler, who was a longtime leadoff hitter in Major League Baseball, most especially with the Atlanta Braves. So, no.
Oh, okay.
This guy's at the Murrah Old National Center, which is a great venue.
Kicker, that's how the Bears get their points, right?
Yeah, well, that's how they used to. That used to help. That's back when they were better, back in that particular era, though.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
What do you got?
Well, I love hearing Venturi as usual. I was just thinking he would probably agree with the way they're going now. It's smarter to draft for some defensive depth. Like, they could start with Tyler Warren at tight end. Like, that's all a talk and everything. But thinking about the strategy going forward and how tough the schedule is next year, I think that youth and inexperience really harm them a lot with the A.D. Mitchell and Richardson. They don't need to get younger. I think they would need to invest their money on great athletes defensively in the draft, but free agency could really help them out. Experience to help build up Anthony Richardson and his confidence and teach him stuff as far as the personnel change.
Yeah,
Would you agree with that?
Not only hard targeting, those athletes or those type of individuals in free agency, but I think we often forget that you also have to, and I know it's easy to say, well, if you're going to offer them the most money, they're going to come here. But you have to sell them on this operation right now. And we used to kind of feel that maybe there was more of a selling point years ago, now decades ago, than there is right now. You kind of wonder the selling point just beyond the monetary figure, Jonathan, because, how many lame duck final year do or die type of situations are we talking about with the general manager, with the head coach, with the quarterback? I mean, there's going to have to be a lot of selling technique, I think, put into it. And I know people easily say, well, you offer enough money, that's going to be fine. But, we shall see. That's going to be, I think, a difficult selling point with the state of this team right now.
Yeah, I did notice that Juwan Johnson would be a good addition on the free market. If he's coming from the Saints, then the Colts might actually look good to him. I thought that might be a bright spot.
Well, they reportedly had Danielle Hunter in the crosshairs a year ago, and we saw how that worked out with him now in Houston. So maybe, it's always going to be about the money. Don't get me wrong. I completely understand that. But when you look at these situations and wonder if this is going to be either you win or you're done, and then you kind of – we said the same thing about, will defensive coordinators have interest here that you want because of the situation with the general manager, with the coach, with the quarterback? These are all selling points that you're going to have to navigate if you're the Colts going into this offseason.
No, yeah, definitely. I actually got into delusional is the word of the day argument with somebody who believes that Ballard just hasn't found himself the right head coach yet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I think he's bringing out the worst in them because he's not giving them a great bolster, like a great chance in terms of explosive plays and juice and letting Bradley hang around for a little too long. But anyway, yeah, that was just my thought. They're playing the two West divisions next year, and that's just, the roster this past year is not going to cut it.
Yeah, it's tough. It is going to be really tough. Jonathan, I appreciate your call, man.
Thank you.
All right, Pacers starters for later on tonight. I mentioned no Tyrese Halliburton against the Cavaliers. So in his spot will be Ben Shepherd, Nembhard, Turner, Siakam, Mathurin, Shepherd. Your starting five tonight. 7 o'clock tip time. 6:30 coverage begins right here on The Fan. Anything goes top of the hour, and Bill is up next at 239-1070. Hey, Billy, did you know on Thursday on the road downtown, Tom's Watch Bar, we're finally back out, buddy?
Hey, I will be at Tom's Watch Bar, and I can't wait for next Thursday. So,
do you know, have I shared with you the stats on Tom's inventions? Tom's had a pretty fantastic existence. Have I told you that?
No. What is
Tom of Tom's Watch Bar was the inventor of McGriddles and stuffed crust pizza. True story.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the Tom. Tom's Watch Bar
downtown.
Yeah. So McGriddles. Now, I don't eat either, but I know that there are a lot of fans of both out there. So he was the inventor of McGriddles and the inventor of stuffed crust pizza. And really, you would have thought that maybe stuffed crust pizza would have started long ago, right? And it didn't.
Oh, yeah.
It was Tom from Tom's Watch Bar.
Well, I'm going to raise a glass to Tom this weekend.
raise a cheese-filled crust of pizza to Tom at some point this weekend, yeah.
Awesome. That's going to be Thursday. All right, I'll be there.
See, I never could do the McGriddles even when I was allowed to eat them because I don't want my sweet. You know what I mean? Like I don't like the sweet's got to stay with the sweet. Like the pancakes got to stay with the syrup, and to me the sausage stays with the stuff that's not sweet. The bacon stays with the stuff that's not sweet. I don't want the intermingling going on there between the sweet and the other stuff. So it's only pancakes or only waffles, I think, that mixes with the sweet, in this case, the syrup. I've always felt that way.
I agree. That's the way I am as well. Hey, I wanted to mention something on this day in sports. Back in 1964 and 1969, Oscar Robertson was voted the MVP of the NBA All-Star Game in those two particular years. And people might not realize, I did get a chance to see Oscar Robertson play when he played with the Milwaukee Bucks at the end of the end of his career, and he won the NBA championship. But if you want to wonder who Oscar Robertson was, he was a point guard that was 6'4", and he was the equivalent to Magic Johnson. Now, because he's from Indianapolis, I'm going to always say that he's the greatest ever. But he was just so incredibly awesome and won the state championship with Crispus Attucks High School in the mid-'50s, I think 56, 57. That team coached by Ray Crow, who had a cameo role in the movie Hoosiers.
One of my favorite guys of all time. I've interviewed Oscar twice in the last 2 years, and it was awesome. And we actually, I don't even know where this might be, but 2 years ago in the summertime, Billy, I went over to a place on the west side, and we taped the interview, videoed, and then I sat around with him for a long time. We just kind of talked about ball, and it was awesome. Absolutely awesome. Because you know me, and I love basketball, and he is good about talking about hoops that went on back in the day with the Olympic teams, his time in college, his time with the NBA, Attucks, but he can also talk it up for the modern era of basketball, which was just great.
Well, one of the things about him and back in his day at Crispus Attucks, Indianapolis had only won one state championship since like 1919. The powerhouse teams back then were Muncie Central, Crawfordsville. I think South Bend had some good teams as well. But and Milan with Bobby Plump beat Crispus Attucks, I think, in the semi-state that year. But and of course, Bobby Plump was the person that in the movie Hoosiers, Jimmy Chitwood was fashioned after. But one of the things that I'd always ask Oscar was, when Milan won the state championship, they had the first parade around Monument Circle back in '56. And when Crispus Attucks won the state championship the year later, the city did not allow a parade around Monument Circle.
I've heard that story, yeah. Yep.
And Oscar, I think, was kind of bitter about that, but it wasn't because it didn't have anything racially. It's just that there were so many people in Indianapolis, white and black together, that were so excited that Indianapolis had won the state championship that there was just too much of a crowd for the people to handle. And
my man,
so
yep. I'm a big fan of the Big O. There's no doubt about that. I'm going to see you on Thursday, right? Tom's Watch Bar?
You betcha.
That's Tom's Watch Bar, Thursday. Cannot wait to see you there. TVs everywhere.
See you then, man.
See you, buddy. That's Billy right there. All right, I'm a big Reds fan, right? And annually the Reds go on a Reds caravan. Now, if you go back years ago, remember Tucker Barnhart, friend of the show, had Brandon Phillips hold up a JMV Suck sign. The Reds caravan, now this is Sunday the 19th. That's this Sunday, right, James, the 19th? The Reds caravan is going to be over in Speedway at the Dallara IndyCar factory. Vice President and GM Brad Meter will be there. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. Going to have a number of players there. Gapper is going to be there, which I think Gapper is the mascot. So that's over in Speedway on Sunday the 19th. Lawrenceburg, Indiana, also on the 19th. I'm trying to think where else you have. Oh, Bloomington at the Monroe County Convention Center on Thursday the 23rd. So that's a week from Thursday with the Reds caravan. Andrew Abbott, the left-hander, is going to be at that one. And former Red Leg and 1990 World Series champion James Todd Benzinger will be in Bloomington on the 23rd. Fort Wayne coming up on the 24th. And I'm looking, I think those are the only Indiana dates right there. Your Reds Caravan 2025. Take a break. We'll come back. More of your calls. A little anything goes after 6 o'clock. Up until about 20 after, we'll get you to the Pacer pregame show right here on a busy Tuesday, including Rick Venturi, podcast 1075thefan.com, 93.5 1075 The Fan. Tyrese Halliburton later on tonight. 6:30 coverage begins here on The Fan. Pacer pregame show. You have the Cavaliers and the Pacers. TNT is the television broadcast tonight. James, are you shaking your head for a reason over there? Why?
It appears Noah Eagle will be on the call of IU Illinois tonight.
IU Illinois, by the way, radio-wise, with Don Fisher, Eric Sewer, and John Herrick across the hall on 93 WIBC. That pregame show is underway here in about 9 minutes. However, on TV, it's a Peacock. You're getting Peacock tonight, and Noah Eagle is on the call for Illinois and IU down in Bloomington. Noah Eagle is going to join us on the show coming up tomorrow. So should be good. Rick Venturi a little bit earlier today. That podcast is at 1075thefan.com. Here's to hoping you enjoyed that as much as I did. Always good to have Rick on the show once again. We'll do it again coming up around the draft. I don't know if we're going to do something previewing it or something to going over what happens, but that is always the case. Ben writes this: does anyone ever talk about the amount of drop passes this season? AR was far from good, but Kylan Granson, A.D. Mitchell, and company didn't do him any favors at critical points in several games by missing cupcake passes when AR actually did his job. We did talk about that. I think I express my concern and my doubts more on the accuracy. Beyond that, that's a product of this team as well. Don't get me wrong. But I combine the accuracy level and the availability level. That's where I focus and construct my opinion. And it has nothing to do with anything else. While I consider that, I also consider the moments to where you just don't have it. And then the moments where you just don't see him because he's injured. And what he does the best, and Rick described him as running back two. And you have to do it. You have to utilize him. But that's also a detriment because he gets injured. So, no, Ben, that is a point you make, and there's no doubt that that factors into it. But I do broaden my scope a little bit regarding Richardson, even beyond that. That's a product of this team, and certainly problematic. But accuracy and availability are certainly bigger problems to me than anything else. All right, 239-1070. Before we get to anything goes, a little bit of an appetizer for it, James. Give me Fulton at 239-1070. Hi, Fulton.
Hello, John. How are you?
Fulton, I'm great. How are you, bud?
Doing all right.
Good. What do you got for us, buddy?
Well, I'm getting ready for my basketball tournament on the 26th of January.
Yes, you are.
And I was thinking if you want to come.
Where is it again?
Wabash College.
That's a long way for me to go right there, Fulton. But I guess I did drive to Tipton once upon a time, and that's pretty far too, right?
Yes, it is.
Yes. So I did. I go to faraway lands to see you, Fulton.
Yeah. It's gonna be a moment. So
it is going to be a moment. All right. Well, hey, you remind me as we get closer, okay, buddy?
Yep, sounds good. And don't forget to send me that remix of that song.
Oh, yeah, I got to do that, too. That is the Earth, Wind, and Fire Fulton remix of September that is often played on the JMV Takeover. Well done, buddy.
Yep, I'll see you at the where are you going to be at?
On Thursday? I might try to go to the volleyball game on Thursday.
I would love to come, John, and I've never been to a volleyball game.
You've never been to a volleyball game in your life, Fulton? What?
Nope, I never.
That's incredible. All right, well, that's some fun up there, too. We got some friends up at the Fishers Event Center, Fulton. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, the Indy Ignite up there, Thursday, Grand Rapids at our home date. You guys got to check that out, seriously. It's a hell of a time. Oh, yeah, by the way, I got to get George back on either tomorrow or Thursday, one of the two. Good dude. Talk to him at length, the head coach of the Indy Ignite. All right, quick break. You want to do anything goes? Time on the clock is how much as follows, James? What do you got over there?
We will be going till about 6:24.
That's a lot of damn time right there. So you guys better motivate and get something going here at 239-1070. If we have 24 minutes on the clock, we've got 24 minutes of anything goes. Dave Grohl's 56th birthday. Would you rather be known as the lead of the Foo Fighters or the drummer of Nirvana? That was a question I asked a little bit earlier today, which is very anything goes like. Anything goes on the other side up until Pacer pregame. Stay right there. Hey, motivate to call at 239-1070. We're coming at you next.
The Ride with JMV.
Can you fly this plane and land it?
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Holy hell, we got some anything goes before the Cavaliers and the Pacers pregame show tonight at 6:30. So you guys ready? 239-1070. We discuss whatever you want. I mean, within reason, right? Don't be a jackass. I don't want to talk any politics or any BS like that because, frankly, I don't care and I don't want to hear it. But all this other stuff, let's do it. Anything goes at 239-1070. Rick Venturi a little bit earlier. Podcast 1075thefan.com. An awesome hour with Rick. I promise if you missed any of it, you better double back and make sure you check it out. This show also on Facebook. You can check out the Facebook feed and easily find the conversation there too. So, I mean, really, it's whatever the hell you want to do. The content is right there for you. And they've wanted me to become more digital. So there's some video stuff. There's me from at the Fishers Event Center Saturday before the Indian night played. I guess what they call I was shagging balls. I'm a hell of a ball shagger, evidently. And, yeah, I'm a little bit pissy because evidently these dudes I play with tonight aren't going to fire things up. So thanks a lot. Thanks for nothing. Or as they said in Caddyshack, thanks for nothing. Guess I got to do it tomorrow night or Thursday night or something. Hey, by the way, you get the Cavaliers and the Pacers. Pacers won on the road in Cleveland on Sunday. Cavaliers head coach Kenny Atkinson, who I like a great deal, says that Rick Carlisle's decision to play Shepherd for Halliburton caught the Cavs off guard in the second half. Specifically when they put that full court pressure on. Also noted that Rick's phrasing post-game, quote, winning the aggression stats, turnovers, rebounding, and that was a big deal too. That's according to Alex Gold, and I happen to buy that too. 6:30 pregame right here. All right, anything goes at 239-1070. We're ready to rock? Hey, I see BT Dew has phoned in on line 4. BT, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
You going to request Undercover Angel by the late Alan O'Day, or is this something different?
Of course. Well, no. Yeah, you going to play it?
Are you going to talk about Notre Dame fighting Irish football?
Have you got Joe Montana scheduled yet?
Yeah, you got a number for me?
Yeah.
Do you?
1-800 get off your butt and get him, man.
I did not know you were this big of a Notre Dame fighting Irish football fan. I had no idea.
You know, growing up, my dad, his friends, it was all about Notre Dame football. So, and then you know the East Side, man, Catholics.
True that.
You know, wearing the shamrock all the time.
Hey, shout out to our guy, BT, Paul Montgomery, friend of the show and goes to nearly everything, is listening right now. That's
Right.
PM. Paul Montgomery's a stud. Go ahead.
Well, now I do think IU's season was fantastic. That was absolutely beautiful. Love seeing it. So, but I want to talk to you about the Pacers.
Why don't you?
And I've been with you with Miles all along. I was loving, and with with Brian.
This is not going to go well.
No, but with Brian coming in, and I know it's early, but what do you think the Pacers do with Miles? Do they use him as trade bait since his contract's expiring? Do they extend him? What do you think they're going to do?
I think it would be dumb as absolute hell not to let him maintain and bring him back.
I would
dumb as absolute hell. I would tell anybody. I would tell Rick Carlisle that. I would certainly tell Chad Buchanan that. And in fact, it may inspire me to tell Chad Buchanan that right after we get off the line here.
There you go.
Yes,
Give him
it
hell.
would be dumb as hell. And I believe one of the points in my career that was a high watermark was the whole DeAndre Ayton Phoenix matching that offer sheet of 3 years ago now.
Oh,
And that
exactly.
was glorious, man. Miles fits great here with everybody on this team. Thomas Bryant has been an awesome backup. Hopefully he continues to be an awesome backup. That should not alter anybody's thoughts about how much, if you know basketball, you want Miles Turner back here. Because if you believe otherwise, then your head is straight up your ass.
Well,
and I know
it's been
yours
there
isn't.
It's been there before, but I'm with you on this. Hey, I love seeing Walker and Brian out there.
I listen. Thomas, I love dudes that play with legitimate enthusiasm. And what Thomas Bryant has is a legitimate enthusiasm. And he fits this team for that role like a stinking glove. And that's what you're looking for. That's what I was looking for with my run-it-back mentality, which they did. And because of the injuries to Jackson and to Wiseman, you go out and get somebody, again, that fits perfectly, and that has been Thomas Bryant so far.
Cool. I'm with you. Well, go give Chad hell.
Well, would you go get Joe Montana for me? Come on.
I'm on it. I'm
buddy.
on it.
Thanks, BT.
See ya.
That's BT, the legendary BT Do right there. Nick is next on Anything Goes at 239-1070. Nick, go ahead.
Nick, JMV, it's very good to chat with you again.
Thank you, buddy.
I thought that with Anything Goes, we were not going to talk about Miles Turner, but I wanted to bring up a different subject.
Okay.
Which is 80s rappers.
Please.
And so I would say between Rakim and Chuck D and Eazy-E,
yes.
How would you rank those?
Well, Rakim's always my favorite. I think he's the greatest of all time. I think you have the greatest duo of all time. I think if Eric B. did more as a part of the program, they would probably be the greatest duo of all time. But Rakim, number one, Chuck D, number two, and Eazy-E, number three right there. But listen, there's not a lot of wiggle room in between any of these guys right here in terms of the 80s. But that would be my top three right there. I think Eazy-E sometimes does not get nearly the recognition for being such a significant voice as he honestly should.
Well, you just ranked him third. So
I know, and probably shouldn't. I know I'm probably wrong, but no, seriously. Three's good, I think, right? But I mean, think of who's in front of you. I mean, Chuck D and Rakim.
Number one. Yeah. Like Rakim is number one for sure, no question. All right, that's all I had.
Hey, what's your favorite '80s rap song of all time?
Oh boy. That's a tough one.
What's your favorite rap song of the three I just mentioned?
Yeah, I would say for me, it's probably Public Enemy. It takes a nation of millions to hold us back.
Sure.
And probably going with what's the one? Sorry, I'm driving, but
that's okay. Are you wanting to go Public Enemy here? Is that what you're searching for?
Yeah, exactly.
The song? Fight to Power, Welcome to the Terror Dome? No.
No, sorry, this is terrible for your programming, but.
Well, I mean, listen, that's kind of the way that this program is. So, yeah.
Yeah,
it's worked out perfectly. All right, well, we gathered you're a big PE fan. That's good to me.
Well, I'm a even bigger Eric B. and Rakim.
Where are you with Curtis Blow?
Like kind of gimmicky. I don't know. Like wasn't for me necessarily. Right. I appreciate him.
I do
like
too.
Kool Mo D the same way.
I love Kool Mo D. I go to work like a doctor. Yep. How do you like me now? That's good stuff right there.
Yeah, sure.
All right, man. Nick, thank you for the call.
This is the definition of anything goes.
It was the definition of anything goes right there. Indeed. There's Nick right there. I've seen Public Enemy twice in my life. Chuck D's been on the show before. It's glorious. Rakim's never been on the show. I think Eric B. may have been on the show once. They don't get along. Yeah, clearly Eazy-E's never been on the show. He passed away back in 1994. Ice Cube has been on the show. MC Ren was supposed to be on once. I don't think he was. Who else am I thinking of here? Eric Sermon's been on the show before. That's classic stuff. All right, 239-1070. Anything goes. And we go to Todd. Hello, Todd.
I was going with Foghat to your question to Nick. But
Foghat has not been on this show before. But I would do it. I would talk to Foghat. Don't get me wrong.
Lonesome Dave, right?
Yes, exactly. I'd have Foghat on anytime.
So no politics. So J Law will not be calling in during this segment.
No. I don't. I think everybody knows me enough to know right now that that's basically the last thing I would ever want to talk about, and it bores me. It brings out too much of the a-hole in people, and I don't need it. I don't want it, and we don't talk about it. So what do you got, my brother?
The quote of the week is "Run it back." Now, we have similar backgrounds. Similar age. I'm a little bit older, but for me, the origin of the phrase "run it back" was playing pickup basketball on a, whether it was in a gym or on a playground court. Run it back. That to me is the origin of that. Was you lost the game and you're going to run it back because it was it was a fair competitive game. I think that expression is now morphed into beyond its origin when we're talking about sports and stuff. And I think one distinction clearly is the Pacers are running it back with a team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, normally people would say, well, this is what you need, and everybody talks about, a dual threat dude on the wing or whatever. And I was always saying I like who they have. Because I think also, Todd, you look at it this way, they got swept in the Eastern Conference Finals, and a lot of people said, well, that suggests how far you are away from Boston. Now, I would also suggest to you that's how much better Boston was than basically everybody. But I just think you combine the youth and you combine this team and how well they function together, I just wouldn't blank with that. And I didn't want to in the offseason, and I don't want to right now, regardless of who we're talking about. So I love the path.
I guess I would suggest the difference is an Eastern Conference finalist running it back versus a non-playoff 9-8 team that hasn't made the playoffs in 3 or 4 years running it back. And I think there's a difference in my mind between the two options with one franchise versus the other.
I think you could just reference it as savvy leadership and decision making, and kind of go on. Hey, were you a big fan of the Brady Bunch?
Yeah, I can probably tell you I'm probably not at your level, but I'm probably.
Well, give me. All right, the episode that comes right now to top of mind. Give me the episode. You go, okay, Brady Bunch episode. Here it is. What is it?
I think the Marsha football in the nose.
Okay. Yeah.
I get confused.
You always think it was odd because actually Bobby, Peter threw the pass, which was awful, right? And Bobby snapped the ball, and then he was evidently eligible to go catch it too. And you ever notice that pass was never anywhere near Bobby? It was like, I think I'm going to throw this. I don't know whether to fault Peter because it was an awful throw or an accurate throw, because you could not have planned that any better than smacking Marsha right there on the nose.
For sure. I get it. I hate it when they got curly hairs and froze versus the straight hair look.
I will also tell you this date in 1972, speaking of what you just referenced, curly hairs, right, and froze.
Yeah,
1972.
Right. When Mike and Greg all of a sudden go to the
So this date in Brady Bunch history in 1972 was the episode where Peter went through puberty.
That was another great episode.
And it was time to change, sha-na-na-na-na. That, when his voice was changing, and that was a reference in Peter Brady going through puberty. And they tried to kick him out of the family band, but decided to go ahead and keep him. And then Greg, savvy as he is, wrote Peter going through puberty and his voice changing into a song called Time to Change. This date, 1972.
The Bradys weren't exactly the Partridges, but yeah, okay, I got it.
I don't even know if puberty was ever referenced as puberty in that episode either. So
yeah, the inference though was clear. Hey, just real quick. I'm 60. I retire at the end of this month, so January 31st, I will be done in my historical field of business. What was the first job? The first job I ever had, I was 8 years old, delivering the Indianapolis Star. What was your first job?
I was working one of those. My dad had a construction company, and he was awful at it. And obviously, I've told the story before. We didn't get along, nor did we have a very solid relationship. But at the end of my high school years, I worked for him one summer, and he had me. We were going to pour concrete in this building in Bedford. And you know those machines that stamp down the gravel before you pour the concrete? I guess they're called stampers. I worked on that day, I think, a stamper and a jackhammer. That was my first gig. And there is zero way that concrete still exists. I can't imagine how faulty that concrete preparation was. There's no way that it lasted. But I stamped down gravel on a construction site. That was my first gig.
I'm glad your dad wasn't a coal miner.
Oh, he was awful. Yeah, it was awful. And I cleaned a lot of pools too, but I don't know if I really count that as that much of work back then. So I cleaned, including my own, but I cleaned a lot of pools.
We talked almost no sports. So
anything else, Todd?
No, we're good, my friend.
You got it, Todd. Thank you very much. Anything goes. And that's what it's all about right there. A little bit of everything. Anything goes wise. I don't even know if that's officially called a stamper. It's this thing, and it kind of jumps up and down and vibrates, and it packs down the gravel before you pour the concrete.
Stamper seems like
around the footers.
Stamper seems like a perfectly applicable term.
I'm going to tell you what. And I've always given a great deal of credit to those that work in such trades, because there is nothing in my existence, and I've changed tires, done the whole detasseling of corn stuff, all these things relatable to growing up in rural Indiana. But I've done all that. Never had there been anything more difficult than having to run a stinking jackhammer. That's hard stuff. And I know people still do that today. And I always give credit where credit is due. James.
According to Microsoft Bing, it was either a plate compactor or a hand tamper. I'm assuming the plate compactor.
Did you say tamper or stamper?
Tamper.
All right. Yeah, this thing just vibrated. It was like you had to hold it down like a jackhammer. And it's called a compactor, according to Josh Stewart right there. Compactor. Thank you, Josh. What was that? 87, maybe? Me and the compactor. Yeah, I clean pool. I never really thought cleaning the pool was, job worthy, I guess, but I did do that often. Skivvy says, bring back the GNR, anything goes. Skivvies is not a big fan of Florida Georgia Line, anything goes.
Did Guns N' Roses used to lead in anything goes?
There isn't anything goes. But, I think Florida Georgia Line's fine. Jeff Stevens writes this, looking for a big game from TJ tonight. Got to get that crowd going. Tuesday night game in January. This is pretty sweet tonight. No Tyrese Halliburton. He is out with what is now described a little bit earlier by head coach Rick Carlisle as a groin injury and not, in fact, a hamstring injury. But no Tyrese Halliburton, and Ben Shepherd is in the starting lineup for the Pacers coming up later on tonight. Bottom of the hour, your coverage begins right here on The Fan. Joseph Fenton Faust checks in. More of a factor was AR and a horrible tight end room than drops. But Chris liked his guys. Hey, if you missed Rick Venturi a little bit earlier, my advice to you is to double back in whatever means necessary. The podcast, I mentioned you can go to Facebook or you can go to X, but Facebook certainly, and go through the show as we're obviously on YouTube and track that down easily in the 4 o'clock hour. It's great. James.
You can also find it on Spotify. The entire interview is up in its entirety by itself on Spotify.
We're on Spotify?
Really, wherever you get your podcasts.
We're just like the Foo Fighters on Spotify.
Whatever.
Yeah. JMV, I heard you talking about Dave Grohl a little bit earlier today. I think I would rather be known as drummer for the legendary band Nirvana than the lead singer of Foo Fighters. I think James, I would say the lead singer. I think Dave Grohl has brought more overall to the music experience that he's provided for us than just being referenced as the drummer for Nirvana.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. I think ultimately we would have found that out anyway. Dave Grohl is 56 years of age today, so he was a high school grad in 1987. Dave Grohl. All right, James, great job out of you today. Again, Rick Venturi, you can find us on Spotify right next to Foo Fighters songs. Are we between the Foo Fighters and Jane's Addiction?
I'm sure that's exactly where we are.
That's Rick Venturi earlier. Podcast 21075thefan.com. Jeremiah Johnson, Greg Rakestraw. Noah Eagles on the call on Peacock tonight with Illinois and IU. Noah joins us on the show tomorrow. We'll recap that and more. There's Eddie Garrison. Got Pat Boylan, Mark Boyle, Eddie Gill on the other side. Pacers Radio's got you. Cavaliers and Pacers. The pregame show starts at 6:30. Enjoy. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.